Okay, so we're recording now. It tends to be a bit glitchy if I start recording and streaming at the same time, so I'm going to start recording a couple of minutes beforehand. Who's actually on the call? We've got Adam, Paula, Betty, Quantum Eraser, and me.
Yeah.
Are you happy with all your sounds?
You got chocolate saying in the live stream on Discord already.
All right. Do we have to do an Arwen briefing?
We are live already, by the way, John. So.
No, we're not
yeah.
live.
Oh, great.
We're not. No, we're not. We're recording. I like to start. I like to start
Yeah,
the
well,
recording a little early.
at least it is recording, so it will be sent out, right?
Yeah, Anthony's coming too at some point, so he's not going to have the Arwen briefing. So just a short briefing. You guys know. Just try to keep your points. Please try to keep your points concise. That's all I ask.
I've got one question then before we start, because I did read that document, and is that the point?
That's what I mean. That's real concise. Thanks. Yeah, that's the point.
I thought that's the best way I could sum it up.
Yeah, don't worry. Just ask your questions, man, when we get there. That's fine. A lot of the points I'm going to bring out of that document, so.
Well, there was individual critiquing of it, but again, it didn't seem to get to a point. Would be my only.
Well, when you got Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Given when you look up a definition, you're expecting one, maybe two sentences. Yeah. That's a tell. For bullshit meter should be pegged.
That's all right. I just wanted to check I was on the same track.
Yeah.
Right, we're starting live now. Welcome to BALLBUSTERS Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Joining me this evening on this special BALLBUSTERS is Adam Meakin, Quantum Eraser, Betty Van Velsen and Paula, otherwise known as Bible Literalist. Very good to have you all.
Hello, thanks.
Hello, good evening.
Evening, everyone.
Ahoy hoy.
Hello, hello, hello. So today's topic of discussion will be evolution. We will reference a few other people from Non Sequitur along the way, but this is hopefully going to be a very well received show. I know it's been heavily advertised, so thank you to all of you who are joining us in this live stream. Who wants to kick off the first evolution related subject? Looking at you, Paula.
Oh, I'm kicking it off?
Yeah, if you want to start us off with your comments.
You're presenting.
Okay.
Didn't you know?
This is your
Surprise.
show. You're in charge here now. It's all down to you now.
I'll give you a second if you want, Paula, just to gather yourself. For me, we covered it last night on Iron Realm, and as Nathan says, it is anticipated because I'm really interested in. John's given me a little bit of reading to do, but I'm very interested in what he's going to present and how he's going to dissect it, more importantly. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for me, this is one of my early studies and conspiracy theories, if you will, because as a young Earth creationist since my teens, that's a long time ago. So this is something I've been familiar with for quite a long time, and I really haven't seen anything new since then. So this ought to be fairly straightforward, I think.
Betty, Got a few introductory comments.
Yeah, well, when I was young, I thought about evolution. Well, when they taught it at school, I thought, okay, are apes my ancestors? And I couldn't believe it. But you take it as it's being presented. But if you go into it much deeper, then you know that it can't be. So that's my background. So I went into that rabbit hole pretty quick too. So, and yeah, it's for me it's a story, but hopefully that will be presented tonight too. So
Hopefully so. Shout out to Chow Yun Cat, getting some love. Paula on the panel. Go Paula! Woo!
I got me a cheerleader.
Indeed.
Well, that was a great presentation. Well, we'll see you later, folks.
Thanks, that's all. And with that, I will say a huge... No, I'm only joking. So do you want to kick off the presentation proper, John? Do you want me to present you?
Yeah. Tell me when it's up.
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Yeah, I thought I'd start off because we may have some new people here and they could be asking themselves, well, why evolution? Isn't this a flat earth channel? What does this have to do with flat earth? Well, we did Big Bang last week and now evolution, right? Well, number one, we're here to expose pseudoscience pretender clowns. And number two, all of it's connected right by the lips. It all stems from no God, Big Bang, ever expanding, inflating universe, 2 trillion galaxies. Now, that's just in the observable universe now, right? And then combined with evolution, these things are connected by the lips, folks. Near its base, the heliocentric reification model. And you think this is all random, right? Don't sell these pseudoscientists pre-short. They have a goal. And I'm not talking about the hordes of knuckle dragon parroters. I'm speaking about the pontiff hierarchy. And they've been at it for much longer than 500 years. This fairy tale of epic proportions that you're dealing with today is particularly insidious. The pseudoscience clergy know that the majority of people have taken at least an intro to biology course, 25 years ago. And that little bit of knowledge from the deep, dark past combined with pride, the never-ending public parade of pseudoscience biologists, and a worldview that would make Mr. Magoo blush, it's a very dangerous thing. So what we're going to do, we're going to eviscerate this disheveled monkey. Okay? That's our mission here today. So the undisputed smoke and mirrors shapeshifter of all time, bar none, may I present to you fairy tale evolution. This thing is a cluster gaggle. But this is what I do. Ever since I come out here 10, 12 years ago, I said, what's going on? Everyone talking about evolution this and evolution that. I'm sitting there, well, let's get down to basics. So I asked these painfully excruciating questions to everyone. I don't care who you are. You're a PhD, molecular biologist, cellular biologist, or Joe Coffey. You're getting these questions put to you. And here they are. They're quite simple. Evolution, what's that? Then number one, define evolution. Number two, post the scientific theory of evolution. Number three, post the formal scientific hypotheses and experiments that concretize it into a real scientific theory. And number four, highlight the independent variables used in the test. Listen, these are basic, reasonable questions, folks. I'll tell you what, you want to send these people off the reservation, ask these questions. I don't care who they are. Just post these questions to them. You'll get called so many names it'll make a billy goat puke. That's when you know, see, that's a tell, right? That they're clueless and they're emotionally tied to this fairy tale religion. You're never going to get to these, number 3 and number 4. Why? Because they can't answer question number 2, right? I just stick with the first 2 questions. We never get down here. They try to go here, but I don't let them because you can't get there without answering number 2. And you can't get to number 2 without answering number 1. Define evolution. Like I said, nobody in 12 years, from Joe Coffey to Betty Breadmaker to anyone from the hallowed halls of quackademia, has answered any of them. None. Why? Well, they don't exist. These do not exist. That's why they can't answer them. So I just put the screws to them. So the clown community answered these questions. Okay? They can't. I'm just teasing them. So after this, most of this presentation is going to focus on these two questions. But first, we're going to have the evolutionary Rhodes Scholar, Steve McClown and the Clan McClowns, and Aaron Ra go ahead and kick this thing off. So, Nathan, go ahead.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
As a
and
matter
you
of
said they
fact,
can't explain any
there-
scientific
there
law,
are
but we
there are
actually
many
do have
evolutionary
a number
theories.
of scientific laws
Excuse me,
that
sir.
specifically
Your
apply only to evolution.
Okay, so your screen's back up.
So, rare and blah. We actually do have a number of scientific laws that specifically apply to evolution. Oh, really? Have you heard of Ernst Mayr by chance? Professor Emeritus, Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard University. From Stephen Jay Gould, Ernst Mayr, the world's greatest living evolutionary biologist. Let's listen to this, folks. We're going to circle back to this thing. Listen closely. Darwin introduced historicity into science. Evolutionary biology, in contrast with physics and chemistry, is a historical science. The evolutionist attempts to explain events and processes that have already taken place. Listen up. Laws and experiments are inappropriate techniques for the explication of such events and processes. Instead, one constructs a historical narrative consisting of a tentative reconstruction of the particular scenario that led to the events one is trying to explain. This should shock you, folks. Let's go through it. We're going to circle back here. So, Darwin introduced historicity into science. What's that? Historicity? Does he have a time machine or something? I don't know. Evolutionary biology. In contrast, remember all the presentations I start with denoting the pseudosciences versus the actual sciences? See, Ernst did it here for me with evolutionary biology because he's contrasting. It's a juxtaposition with the actual sciences, physics and chemistry. All right? The evolutionist attempts to explain events and processes that have already taken place. What's that? That's a rhetorical question. This is the big one. As per Aaron Ra, they have a number of scientific laws that specifically apply, right? Only to evolution. Not according to Ernst Mayr, the world's greatest living evolutionary biologist, Aaron Blah. He says laws and experiments are inappropriate techniques for the application or explication of such events and processes. This is science. Experiments. There's no experiments. Unbelievable. And here's the last one. Instead, one constructs a historical narrative consisting of a tentative reconstruction of a particular scenario that led to events one is trying to explain. Right? So that's great. Aren't science without experiments? They are inappropriate. Must be a new type of science. So, welcome to the pseudoscience fairy tale, an argument from complete ignorance fallacy, just so story, historical narrative, and a cherry on top begging the question fallacy on nuclear steroids. This statement. One constructs a historical narrative consisting of a tentative reconstruction of the particular scenario that led to the events one is trying to explain. That's textbook circular reasoning, folks. And how can you have a real scientific theory without experimental test when, from chemistry about, a scientific theory summarizes a hypothesis or group of hypotheses that have been supported with repeated testing? From quarks to quasars, a scientific theory consists of one or more hypotheses that have been supported with repeated testing. from the University of Rochester Physics Labs. A scientific theory represents a hypothesis or group of related hypotheses which has been confirmed through repeated experimental tests. So again, how can you have a theory that doesn't have any experimental tests? And there have never been and never will be scientific laws. It's a misnomer. We went over this in previous presentations. Go look at the scientist or science presentation, right? I explained this in great detail. All we have are natural laws. These natural laws never, ever, ever enter the scientific method. There is no cause and effect with the laws, right? An easy example, what's the cause of entropy, i.e. the second law of thermodynamics? It's a moronic question. So let's stop here. Any comments?
So are you trying to say there's no scientific evidence for evolution?
Yeah.
So
No, there's not only no scientific evidence. There's no science in this whatsoever. Go ahead.
It was a leading gag that I thought maybe Adam would pick up on. There's a
Well,
scene.
I was about to just say, John, just scroll up to the start. I think, to be fair to them, they do add that disclaimer in. There you go. They do say, you're quite clear with regards to it's not applicable. So they're honest that at least experiments aren't, because we haven't got time machines or hundreds of years to do these things in.
No, Ernst Mayer's honest. not them. When you said them, no, they're not honest. Ernst Mayr was honest here, right? But not them, the evolutionists. What do we hear? Evolution is the most validated scientific theory in the history of man, right? Sorry, go ahead.
The point was the opening is historical science. That was my only point of raising an eyebrow, not something that I've put together.
What's historical science?
Just the line below, beginning of the line below, John. In contrast with physics and chemistry, is a historical science. Yeah. That was the bit that just maybe raised an eyebrow. To quote John, I think, is it married bachelor?
Yeah. It's a conjured married bachelor.
But other than that, then the bit I did agree with, fair play. I thought it was a bit of a disclaimer. It's critique, obviously, but yeah, that was my input.
Yeah, it's not historic science. It's just a pseudoscience. It's not applicable. It's not applying the application of the scientific method in any way, shape or form. It's a declaration. That's the main point of the opening. What do we hear from them? Well, it's scientifically valid. There's loads of scientific evidence for evolution. No, there isn't. What they call historic evidence. Usually, well, I'm not going to say usually. I'm going to assume that we get a lot of denying the antecedent in terms of them formulating their claimed scientific evidence. Am I wrong?
No, it's a lot of affirming the consequent form of logical fallacies. Denying the antecedent is a specialized one, save for their fairy tale geologic column.
Oh, okay. It's a specific branch of it that they're using, that particular logical fallacy. Probably won't come to it in this show.
Yeah, well, you can see the parallels, right, between flat Earth because they're starting out, or spherical Earth because they're starting out with something that doesn't exist, evolution, right? So it's going to be in affirming the consequent every single time.
Right.
Yeah, but they say that they observe something. They say that they observe these bones in the ground, and then they extrapolate basically a story out of that, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's not a phenomenon.
They say that they observe something.
Well,
and that they ask the question, right?
That's not a phenomenon, though. That's a concrete noun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can I have a bash? So if evolution, then we will see reduced size bones in human skeletons. We do see reduced size bones in human skeletons, therefore evolution. How's that?
Don't hurt yourself. We're gonna get to it. I'll show you. It's in here.
So we're pretty much talking about forensics again, where we're looking at present evidence to try to piece together a story and come up with a probability is the best we can do. And that is not hard science. It never was. It's how people try to figure out who committed a crime, for example. And when it parades as a scientific theory, it has to be falsifiable and it can't be done. I've seen quotes, I don't have them right in front of me, that basically, if they find anything such as the oxymoron living fossils or anything else they would ever find, would they abandon the theory as you should do in science? And they say no. So they're going to bypass it like Scotty on the Enterprise until, you can't even see the original thing anymore because it's been changed and changed and changed and changed. And they're proud of this because they say that's science. It's always changing. No, this is self-contradiction and not following your own rules on what a scientific theory is, because you're supposed to be able to come up with an experiment to falsify it. And it's impossible when they refuse to let go.
So what you're saying is correlation is not causation, even though they're asserting definitive cause and effect relationships when they use the word science.
Yeah, and they keep moving the goalposts continually, because if we say, well, we're going to expect this certain result from this certain test on something and then make up a story to explain it, and then it doesn't turn out the way they wanted, so they'll just brush that aside and think, well, we'll figure it out eventually. So you have to have faith in the future of what they might discover that'll solve their problem for them.
Yeah,
So
dealing with
it's
zealots.
not falsifiable.
Zealots, that's the word.
Yes.
Any more, or should we move on?
If you do move on, go ahead and play from 114.57 and stop at 116.16. Try to listen close, folks. It's going to be hard. Don't worry about it because I painstakingly wrote everything down. So we're going to go through this step by step.
We
have to-
yeah,
so,
we
okay,
can.
hang on,
Dave,
hang on, you guys are talking over each other now. You guys are talking over
Yes,
each other
we have
now.
to let
Hang
him
on.
finish.
So Dr. McNerney, what are the two? What are the different types? I only know one scientific. Honestly, if you can tell me another one, I'll be appreciative. I only know one scientific theory. Let me finish.
Equilibrium would be an
I
alternative to
Let him answer the
Darwinian. That's just two.
I have to get the
The fact
question
of the
out.
matter is, you asked me how many, and I would tell you this: there are as many different theories of evolution as there are evolutionists.
Can
No
you tell
two
us
of them
some,
agree on
please?
exactly how it happened.
Can you tell us some? Can you give me the name? I'm being honest with you. I only know one scientific theory of evolution. It is called modern evolutionary synthesis combined with descent with modification. That's the only one that I'm aware of. If Arn knows another one, then I'll be impressed and I will go, okay,
Yeah,
Arn, you're right.
It's now. It started with Darwinism, then became. It started with Darwinism, and then became the Mendelo-Darwinian synthesis, and it's gone to another stage past that, and is now the extended evolutionary hypothesis.
Which is the same thing as modern evolution synthesis combined with descent with modification.
Exactly.
That's the extended modern synthesis. And you
And
define
So there's one and only one theory of evolution.
Right. And you would obviously include epigenetics and evo-devo in that extended synthesis.
Exactly.
Right? That's the one. Right. Okay. So.
Okay.
So did you catch all that? Let me know when it's up.
Yeah, you're up.
So, yeah, we're going to go through this. So, rare and blah. Number one, it started with Darwinism, then became the Mendelo-Darwinian synthesis. Then it's gone to another stage past that. Yeah, which one, please? Then is now the extended evolutionary hypothesis. So let's tear this apart. Started with Darwinism. Charles Darwin never postulated a single scientific hypothesis in his friggin' life, let alone establish a scientific theory. Number two, it's gone to another stage past that. Yep, that no-named other stage, eh? I know, let's just make some shit up. Number 3, extended evolutionary hypothesis. This thing doesn't exist. And the extended evolutionary synthesis is not extended evolutionary hypothesis because a hypothesis is not a synthesis. Moreover, a hypothesis or synthesis is not a scientific theory, for crying out loud. Now, this cluster gaggle. Let's go through. I'm going to go through it once. I'm going to circle back. So, Steve McClown, I only know one scientific theory of evolution. It's called modern evolutionary synthesis combined with descent with modification. If Aaron knows another one, then I'll be impressed. Rare and blah. It's now the extended evolutionary hypothesis. Steve McClown, which, okay, is the same thing as modern evolutionary synthesis combined with descent with modification. Rare and blah. Exactly. There's one and only one theory of evolution. Steve McClown, that's the extended modern evolutionary synthesis. You would obviously include epigenetics and evo-devo in that extended synthesis. Rare and blah. Exactly, of course. Steve McClown, that's the one, right? So let's go through this. Let's see if there's one and only one here. Let's see how many we can count. So we got the modern evolutionary synthesis, descent with modification, extended evolutionary hypothesis. So we got 3. Of course, they say it's one and only one. Then we got extended modern evolutionary synthesis. That's 4. Then epigenetics and evo-devo, 5, 6. So my first question is define one. Clowns. Friggin' Elmer Fudd and all these rope-a-dope are blushing. And wasn't it funny, Rare and Blah was holding up 2 fingers while Steve McClown is saying there's only one scientific theory. Number 2, Steve McClown's modern evolutionary synthesis. Pay attention to these words, folks, because words mean things. Has been falsified. From Dennis Noble, physiology is rocking the foundations of evolutionary biology. In experimental physiology, let's see what he has to say here. In this article, I will show that all the central assumptions of modern synthesis, also called neo-Darwinism, have been disproved. Moreover, they have been disproved in ways that raise the tantalizing prospect of a totally new synthesis, a shapeshifter. That's my addition. One that would allow a reintegration of the physiological science and evolutionary with evolutionary biology. So your modern synthesis is, I don't know, number one, I don't know how you disprove a non-existent fairy tale, but he did it, Dennis Noble, so there goes that one. Next, Steve McClown's descent with modification that he incoherently attached to the now debunked modern synthesis isn't a scientific theory in itself is debunked. So descent with modification, this is just code word for ancestry, common descent, phylogenetic tree. Basically universal common descent or the tree of life. Wonder where they got this from. A, if ancestry is not assumed from similarities, then there is no correlation between similarities and ancestry. Ergo, to make the argument, you need to make that assumption. That is, it's a begging the question fallacy. Number 2, all they have is a textbook affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. Here it is. If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. If evolution is true, P, then insert any Darwinian grab bag post hoc observation, fossils, homology, similarity, genetic variation, and others, Q. We observe post hoc observation, Q. Therefore, evolution is true. Therefore, P. Or, specifically to our topic, if common ancestry is true, P, we will observe similarities, Q. We observe similarities, Q. Therefore, common ancestry is true. Therefore, P. The logical fallacy is that P doesn't necessarily follow from Q. For example, if I had just eaten a whole pizza, P, I would feel very full. Q. I feel very full. Q. Therefore, I've just eaten a whole pizza. Therefore, P. Couldn't I have eaten a 20-ounce ribeye with fries or the old 96er? Let's put this quackery out of its misery quick, just in case it wasn't clobbered by the above. Check this out. Dr. Craig Venter, atheist evolutionist, the grand poobah of geneticists, the geneticist of geneticists, in front of God and everybody, about 1,500 people in the auditorium, comes out with this. There is no tree of life. It's an artifact from early scientific studies that aren't holding up. So there is not a tree of life. The audience gasped. Dawkins and Krauss turned different shades of green, along with the Nobel Prize winners on the panel. He's like E.F. Hutton. When he talks, people listen. You hear that sound? That's the comma descent fairy tale carousel tree circling the drain at light speed, as if he actually needed to say it. Even with DNA, this is from Takata, Genetic Perspective on the Origin of the History of Humans, in the Annual Review of Ecology and Systematics. Even with DNA sequence data, we have no direct access to the process of evolution, whatever that is. So the objective reconstruction of the vanished past can be achieved only by what? Creative imagination, folks. That's all they got. Number 4, and again, there's no such animal as the extended evolutionary hypothesis. And the hypothesis isn't a scientific theory. Number 5, there's no such animal as Steve McClown's extended modern evolutionary synthesis. What he did was he just incoherently slapped these two things together. Watch. From their alma mater wiki. The extended evolutionary synthesis consists of a set of theoretical concepts argued to be more comprehensive than the modern synthesis. You see, they're juxtaposed. Even on the extended evolutionary synthesis's website, they have a whole paper on this. The title, How the Extended Evolutionary Synthesis Differs from the Modern Synthesis. So this is a joke. He just made this shit up. All right. So let's summarize. So what do we got for the one and only one scientific theory of evolution? Number 1, the modern synthesis. Well, I debunked that, and it's not a scientific theory. Descent with modification just got debunked and not a scientific theory. Extended evolutionary hypothesis never existed, and a hypothesis isn't a scientific theory. By the way. Number 4, extended modern evolutionary synthesis never existed. Like I said, he just made it up from the above by combining these two. Clowns. They incoherently stuck it together, and it's not a scientific theory anyway. Epigenetics is not the scientific theory of evolution. And number 6, Evo Devo is not the scientific theory of evolution. So this is just one big cluster gaggle. So in the dishonorable mention, the extended evolutionary synthesis, which Beavis and Butthead didn't bring up, consists of theoretical concepts, like I just showed you. Theoretical concepts are not scientific theories. Comments, questions?
Do we get to the actual science that they use at some stage, though?
Say that again.
Do we ever get to a stage where they have anything that they can even derive from something that is scientific at all?
No, zero.
What about claimed experiments then? Do they have anything that's claimed to be an experiment, like Cavendish?
Well, they can't get there because they can't get past the first 2 questions. No.
Oh, so yeah. I mean, that slips by a lot of people when I've seen you discussing this. You'll say, "Well, what's evolution?" And most people don't appreciate the gravitas of that question.
Yeah, but they can predict, can they? They can predict, and then they find these that what they predict they find in the ground afterwards. How can that be?
So they can predict, huh? Keep that in mind. We're going to get to that topic. Just keep that in mind. You can move on. But remember that prediction.
Yeah.
They can predict what they can find in the ground, Betty. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, go on.
I just wanted you to expand on that point. So you're saying they can predict specifically.
Oh, they can predict. Oh, yeah. Well, they say that they predicted a couple of fossils that they would find later on in layers and stuff, and then they say that this is the explanation between that species and that species. So this evolved from that to the other, and because they found a sort of intermediate, I think, or something. I don't know.
I
It's not
see.
my
So,
story, but
so they kind of say if evolution exists, then you'll find these certain bones in these specific layers, and they do find those specific bones in those specific layers. So obviously, evolution exists, right?
yeah, you have that with these birds, I believe, that because they now say that the dinosaurs evolved into birds, and now you have these. I think it's all these names, Australopithecus, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Archaeopteryx.
Hold on, let's get it through. Hold on.
Archaeopteryx?
Let's get it
Yes,
through
that
once.
one.
Hold on. Paula, can you say it just once clearly? Because I didn't get it either.
Archaeopteryx.
Archaeopteryx.
Yeah, it's a difficult name. And that's a sort of an in-between bird because it has had 4 wings, I believe, also on his hind legs or something. And they found these fossils. Often they tend to be fake, by the way, because they find them in China of all places, and these Chinese are really good at making stuff, I think. So
Well, nobody has a very good track record on predicting anyway. We all remember the coelacanth, which was held to be a transitional fossil that it was this fish with extra appendages, so it seemed, from the imprints in the rocks, and then they find one caught by a fisherman. They find living ones. They find them all the time now. And so they made up the term living fossil, which is an oxymoron because it just means, that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Well, it's still alive. It's a fossil, but it's still alive. It's just desperation.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And they say, oh yeah, well, one day a fish decided to go on land and try to live there, and because you have these fishes that are able to go on land, but for me, they were just designed that way because I suppose that I would want to live in sea, so I go to sea and then I suddenly develop flippers and go swim.
Yeah, I heard.
How is that going to be?
I watched a science show. I just sat there and laughed because at one point they're like, "Look at these polar bears. They go in the water a lot. They want to go back to the sea, like they came from." And then later they're like, look at these dolphins. They beach themselves trying to get these certain little fish that go up on the shore. They're trying to grow legs. It's just, they were saying this with a straight face. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Well, they always die when they are beached, right? Because they can't go back into the sea. These whales and all that, these beach whales, they kind of go back.
Yeah, and they beach for all sorts of other reasons too, but some of them do at certain times of the year. Certain other fish are in the shallow waters and they get stuck a lot of times, but they're not trying to get out of the water. They're trying to catch food and get back in because they know they'll die if they stay there.
I stuck that in the, did you see in the advert, I stuck in the, what are they called, lemmings? Shout out to Tina Baker for the super chat. Thank you very much indeed for your support, by the way. I put them in jumping off cliffs and then, growing wings and stuff and going on gliders because exactly they're trying to figure out how to fly when they jump off the cliffs. They're hoping they'll grow wings on the way down.
Yeah. I heard a boy and at school say to a teacher one day, well, if these dinosaurs were running and then because they have to be developed into flying beings because they want to flee from predators. I mean, these guys would all be dead before they would have sprouted wings.
Right. You have to have failed trials. And how does that pass on genes to the next? Because if you killed yourself trying, it's just like there's this documentary called Animals That Defy Evolution. The giraffe. Supposedly giraffes got long necks from stretching up to the high leaves, right? But the problem is that when you have that long of a neck, you have to have a system in place so that when the giraffe bends down to drink, it doesn't blow its brains out with blood pressure that it has to have when it's standing upright. So there's this little sponge-like device in the brain, in the head, that absorbs the blood until the pressure can lower while it drinks. And then when it lifts its head back up, it would pass out, except that sponge squeezes and releases the blood and to wait for the pressure to catch up. It's impossible to do trial and error with that.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times do you have to try that?
They have to have a certain heart, I think, also to pump the blood through the veins and stuff, I think.
It's very strong, yeah. I mean, has a long way to go.
Yeah, so they're particularly designed to do that function, I think. But yeah, it's funny. Stories. I like that's good bedtime stories, I guess. Right?
Comedy.
Yeah.
You've been very quiet, Adam. We heard lots of medical sounding terms in that last presentation. I thought we'd hear lots from you.
I was in the bit that got me again was number 2. So descent with modification. And that this, I thought it was quite significant. That I'm not sure John described some granddaddy of genetics. Describes it basically as a joke, a defunct theory, and he's kind of ridiculing it. Is this the evolutionary tree of life, John? That's what I wanted to kind of ask. Is that the...
Yeah, the phylogenetic tree. Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's interesting. But yeah.
Can you explain what epigenetic information is?
No, can you?
No.
Just peel apart the word, right? So you got epi means around or over, right? So epigenetics speaks to changes in expression without changing the primary structure. In other words, changes in expressions of genes without changing the sequence.
Okay, that was kind of consistent.
So it goes along with histone modification. It will go down a rabbit trail here. Don't worry about it. It's not, it's not relevant.
It's not scientifically valid.
No, I didn't say it wasn't scientifically valid. I'm saying that it has nothing to do with fairy tale evolution, whatever that is.
Is it? I don't know. What's a good example?
Yeah, there's some good examples of that with
eye color, won't it be?
No, they did it with.
So maybe I can pose it as a question because it kind of links to what I asked earlier. So, epigenetics is scientifically valid?
Yes.
Well, so this is an example of that then. So it's something that they attribute through.
No. They just state the word epigenetics and combine it with their little fairy tale. This has nothing to do with evolution right here. Nothing. Zero. Because you know why? Define evolution. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
I think if you're thinking in terms of Darwin's finches, you'd probably say it's a slight change in the beak shape as opposed to it suddenly not having a beak and having a nasal passage like we have. That would be what's epigenetics is just a slight change in the beak change. So a slight alteration in the gene coding. I'm pulling this from Google as opposed to the alteration of the genetic code itself. So an alteration that the creature has a beak or it has a palate like we have, sort of thing.
They did an experiment back in the day. Like I said, I'm trying to recall it. It was with these fat mice. I don't know whether they were mice or not. And they changed their diet, right? And what happened was that the histones got methylated and they passed these genes off to their offspring. And these the offspring mice didn't have any diabetes. They weren't fat. They were all healthy. So there was no changes in the structure of DNA. It was just epigenetic changes. So there you go.
Okay, so we're not talking about mutations or anything along
Correct.
that line. It's just a sort of selective coding with the original information, right?
Yeah, there's no changes in the sequence of the DNA. To express genes, you have to be able, because it's wrapped around histones. They're chromatin domains. See, we're going to go down a road here that we're going to get everyone lost. Basically, the messenger or RNA polymerase can't get in there to copy the code because of these structural changes that happen with the histones. So let's not worry about it. Well, that's a rabbit trail we don't need to go down.
Well, to round that out, if nothing else, if they're attributing evolution to these scientific terms, in some way I want to demonstrate that you actually understand what these terms mean for you to decry any sort of association with the fairy tale evolution. Now, you immediately brushed it to one side by saying, well, what is evolution? Which is always going to be the best way to attack this head on, right? But I wanted to make it clear that you do actually know what you're talking about. I know you do, but there might be audience members that don't. That just say, well, he's just hand-waved dismissed that, has he not? Well, no. Moving on.
I thought you were trying to provoke me.
Not at all.
No, just kidding, man. Yeah, and he just said it right off the cuff. He goes, well, epigenetics and evo-devo, right? Well, I could just pop up words too. And, you know, he didn't discuss it. He doesn't know what it means. Obviously, look at all the things that they just made up, right? They're combining things. They're just making shit up. So, there you go.
Any more on this bit, or should we move on?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an analogy, and I suppose it says here, look, the Greek prefix epi, over, outside, or around, and I suppose it's a bit like getting yourself a nice XR3 eye, and they're all XR3 eyes, but the epigenetics of it is how you pimp your ride. You've not changed it into an escort, still, you know what I mean, or it's still an escort. Do you know what I mean? You've not changed it into a different car, but there is a slight variation within that same genetic code. You might bore it out, you might add different lights, you might add different things, but they're kind of trim, I think, around it's.
Okay, so if I expand on your analogy, if I was to say that, you know, the color choices of a car are similar to the color that you might have your hair grow, and the one particular color being more reflective is beneficial in a particular climate, but it was always a choice of color available on the palette. But the fact that you've had that choice and it's benefited you isn't evolution, because nothing's actually evolved. It's just selected a particular color and it's worked out well.
Yeah, I don't know. Would you agree with that, John? Or Betty?
Yeah, I've heard about sheep that were fed, for example, meat instead of vegetables and stuff, or the grass. And then they later investigated how long their intestines were, for example, and they found out that when these animals ate meat, it would have these intestines would have been shorter, so they adapted. But how that's more than in a something that it's genetic that they are able to do. It's not evolving. Because if you feed them grass again, then these intestines will eventually be longer again. So they adapt, and that's the beauty of it. We have these cells that can adapt to certain circumstances, but within what you are, within the kind that you are, the species. Not, you don't suddenly turn into a pigeon or whatever.
Be careful with that species term. That's one thing I didn't get into in this presentation. I don't feel the need to. You're going to see why, but I would be careful with man-made conventions.
Yeah, that's why I said also kind, because kind and species. That's also the discussion between creationists and evolutionists, I believe.
False dichotomy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we may or may not get into those particular concepts. Constructs, whatever. What did you call him? I always fish this word. You said it a moment ago. Convention.
Yep, that's what they are. Human conventions. Be careful of those. They try to fool you with them.
Yeah.
Okay, you're back on screen.
All right, we ready?
Think so.
So, since an actual scientific theory of evolution is non-existent, that is, it has never and will never exist, making it a stone cold fairy tale, let's see if we can at least define the old nag, right? So, all the following definitions, unless I specify otherwise, all the following citations come from the National Center for Science Education, right? Let's take a look at this. So you're saying, well, I want the definition for evolution, right? So you punch this up, defining evolution. So let's see what we got here. You ready? dun 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 dun. Still going.
Can we have a break?
You see where we're going here? Oh my God, we get Encyclopedia Britannica just looking for a simple definition, right? Usually definitions are 1, 2 sentences max. What do we get here? Encyclopedia Britannica. I'll tell you what, folks, if this doesn't tell you that this is cod swallow horse pucky, I don't know what does. So, like I said, I'm going to get all my citations from this National Center for Science Education. Let's go with the first one. Evolution may be defined as any net directional change or any cumulative change in the characteristics of organisms or populations over many generations. In other words, descent with modification. Well, we just destroyed that above. Here's some meat on the bone right here. It explicitly includes, listen up, the origin as well as the spread of alleles. That is genes, variants, traits, values, trait values, or characteristic traits. Okay, I don't want to get off this topic too much. We're going to come back to this here in 1 second. I want you to take a look at these last 2 sentences. I'll read them. Evolution may occur as a result of natural selection, genetic drift, or both. The minimum requirements are those for either process, whatever that means. The next sentence, and I colored it differently for you. Natural selection does not necessarily give rise to evolution, and the same is true for genetic drift, from John Endler. Are they contradictions? That's
Yes.
a rhetorical question. You can get back to that. That's not the meat I want. I want this one. Listen to this again. It explicitly includes the origin as well as the spread of alleles or genes or DNA. And what do we hear from evolutionists? Evolution doesn't have anything to do with abiogenesis. Really? That's how they defined it here. Make my day. This is the begging the question fallacy. Where'd you get alleles, genes, DNA naturally? See, this is the key term here, folks. This is a natural theory, colloquial theory. We want it natural. You can start here. Listen closely. Functional DNA, RNA, or proteins never, ever spontaneously form naturally outside of already existing cells from sugars, bases, phosphates, and aminos, respectively. It's physically and chemically impossible. Why? The second law of thermodynamics, folks. That's why. It's called Gibbs free energy. The delta G here is positive. You don't know what you're talking about, people, and they prey on that. So, to refute, please show a functional 30-mer, that's an oligomer, RNA or protein. The proteins, functional proteins, most are 250 amino acids or larger, that form spontaneously, naturally, outside a living cell or organism from sugars, bases, phosphates, aminos, respectively. I need the source cited. And I'm going to tear it to pieces, just to let you know. The smallest functional DNA or genome is a little over 100,000 nucleotides, so that ain't happening. So let's listen to this. Conclusion from the Grand Poobah of Origin of Life Research. The Grand Poobahs here. This is Leslie Orgel and Gerald F. Joyce. We conclude that the direct synthesis of nucleosides or nucleotides from prebiotic precursors in a reasonable yield and unaccompanied by larger amounts of related molecules could not be achieved by presently known chemical reactions. Just told you. Of course, they're not talking about the second law here. They're talking about something else. They're talking about stereoisomerization, but we're not going to go down that road. Do you know the reasons why? Well, I just told you. Of the approximate 50 obstacles precluding the natural spontaneous formation, what are the 2 elephants in the room? I just gave them to you. Racemization, and the big one, I don't even go there to racemization anymore. I just go to the second law of thermodynamics and stop there. I just drop anchor right there and start flame throwing because that's all I need to. From Dr. Leslie Orgel, again, his last published words, literally. after more than 50 years of origin of life research from PLOS biology. However, solutions offered by supporters of geneticists or metabolist scenarios, don't let this throw you. This is genes versus proteins first, that are dependent on if pigs could fly, hypothetical chemistry, are unlikely to help. Yeah, you know why he's saying this, if pigs could fly? Because it has to violate the second law of thermodynamics. That's why. And that's not even the T-Rex in the room just yet. This is. Number 2, how did stupid atoms write their own software? This is why I say it all the time. In other words, show ink, paper, and glue molecules offering technical instruction manuals and blueprints. The analogy? The ink, paper, and glue molecules are ribose, nucleobases, and activated phosphates, and the technical instruction manual is DNA. That's just the physical part of it, right? Where's the information at? From Paul Davies. He's part of the Arizona State Origins Project, along with Craig Venter and a couple other knuckleheads. Listen to what he has to say. DNA is not a special life-giving molecule, but a genetic data bank that transmits its information using a mathematical code. Most of the workings of the cell are best described not in terms of material stuff, hardware, but information or software. This is supernatural stuff, folks. Not material, immaterial, supernatural. Trying to make life by mixing chemicals in a test tube is like soldering switches and wires in an attempt to produce Windows 98. It won't work because it addresses the problem at the wrong conceptual level. So they can't get them chemically, and they can't get the information. This is a joke. All right, comments, questions.
Sure. Can I go first? Hoping no one minds. So, in terms of the second law of thermodynamics violation that you're describing, at the beginning of quite a few movies that are hinged around evolution. So I'll give you an example. There's a movie called Minions, and the opening sequence is again, like I used in the advert, you've got the typical line of evolution as something gets more and more complex and smarter. And what you're saying is, the opening sequence to that movie where it's got a cell dividing and growing an eye and then crawling out onto the sand and then getting more smart as it gets more evolved. That's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. You said it.
No.
Okay.
No. This is pre-biologic, before cells. That's what we're talking about here.
Okay. So you're talking about in terms of creating, if you like, the structure of DNA in the first instance. That's a violation of the second law.
Yeah, exactly.
When they show you the beginning of the dawn of time, and they show you a lightning strike.
The soup,
striking the primordial soup.
Right.
That's the thing that's required. The chemical processes that are required for the formation of these complex proteins aren't energetically favorable. It requires you to power it up.
Now, even if you did power it up, listen.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that was, I think, the point Nathan was getting at.
Even if you could power it up, it's even worse. If you could throw increased temperatures in there, it's even worse for them because of Gibbs free energy. You have to look at enthalpy and entropy. Any formation of proteins, any nucleosides and nucleotides are delta G positive that are both unfavorable for enthalpy and entropy, meaning that at any temperature, the higher the temperature, the worse it gets for spontaneous formation. So this is a joke. Another thing, they're talking about cells. I'm talking about a single molecule. The most primitive cell has billions of functionally specific complex molecules. I'm telling you one. They can't get one. 30 mer.
Okay, so I'm way ahead of you when I'm talking about a cell then. So you're talking way back, and as Adam puts it, when they describe the primordial soup and they have a lightning strike and just the right chemical balance to create, that's total horseshit. That violates the second law.
What happens when you see lightning strike something?
it dries it.
Go ahead, Adam. I'm done.
Betty?
No, I think that's what I thought. Nathan was too far ahead of himself in terms of where we were, and in terms of what's being formed here. This isn't just, like I say, minerals, and like it's the requirement of complex formation of complex proteins requires input into the system. And the supposition for the beginning of life is, like I say, a lightning bolt, just to get these very small building blocks, not the little bits that are going to be the encoding of DNA. And that was the bit that I got from it, John. Again, what you've got here, it's all very well and good, even if you allow the begging of the question for the structure of sticking your A's, your C's, your G's, all that kind of stuff together. But once again, it always comes back to what's processing that information for it to be allowed to mean anything.
Right. Yeah, John did touch on that. I mean, I was going to hopefully stick on delta G because that still isn't clear to me, if I'm perfectly honest. And I understand how you've explained it to me off air, but if I'm still totally unclear, there's a good chance there's a large portion of the audience that are also unclear. So hopefully, we can...
to turn I don't know, wood into charcoal and fire and flames, you have to start igniting it first. You have to put heat in to just get that very, very basic chemical compound reaction. You've got to add energy into the system in a very basic, crude way. There, you're setting something on fire. But to start to be able to form these and put together these complex proteins not only requires energy, but it also requires direction. It's not something that really kind of happens randomly. It always, as far as I can see, it always requires a biological system to put it together in the first place for it to exist. Otherwise, they don't exist.
The other thing was specifically about when you said software. So again, we're back to information. You know, check out BALLBUSTERS 6 if you want to look into this further. But again, it's the critical detail here is we're not just talking about, like you put it, charcoal. We're talking about structures that have information in them. So where are you going to get that from in your primordial soup with a lightning bolt?
And it really goes back even more than that, because where everything assumes that the laws of nature, the laws of physics, are intrinsic to nature without any design input. And that's ridiculous, because they had to both come into being at the same time, the laws of physics and the matter they act upon. So nature itself is programmed to react in certain ways. You can have your primordial soup and that it just needs a little spark and off we go. But why? Because it's programmed to react. And that's what you cannot get away from. You can't get away from the fact that there had to have been a system encoded so that things react in certain ways at certain times in certain conditions. They're programmed from start to finish. And you can't have something that doesn't even know physical laws, that doesn't obey them because they haven't existed yet, unless you invoke that these laws are part of just random things smashing together and forming compounds. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and if you consider that in a single cell that there goes on so many processes, so many things go on. There are little machines that John said that were in there, that kinesin, I think that you called it, like a little motor, like a little robot that's in there. And if you see all these things happening there, then it's so complex. How more we can zoom in, the more complex it gets. Not easier to understand, but more complex to understand. So I think that cannot be random. There's no randomness in that. That it has to be designed. That's my take on it.
Yeah, you're talking about. Sorry, I'll just say you're talking about lightning bolts creating machinery. I mean, it's absurd.
Well, they do that in video games and stuff. I've seen it done.
Go on, Adam.
Oh, it was what was just being said there. I kind of alluded to it. We got a little off track last night talking about how deep you can see into a cell optically. But I was kind of hinting that it is that complexity of the cell, and it's not just energy, it's sugar molecules being transferred around, which is easy to comprehend. Even within the cell, there's a transfer of information. And I'll say it again, for me, on a cellular level, it's easy to comprehend how cells transmit, but how an initial program for what cellular structure meant is the impossibility from zero for me. It's perfectly sensible that with a well-written code, cells can develop and improve, and that would be the mark of a good programmer. But all of those require a programmer first for even these complex proteins, if you allow them to be formed, to mean something.
Right, back to information. Any more for any more? Should we move on? Right, John, got you back up.
All right, one of my favorites to take the flamethrower to. I just sit back and wait for a little frequency change. Anybody that parrots this, they're in for a world of hurt. I got the nail spike 44-inch Louisville Slugger just waiting for him. So we're back to, and this comes from the National Science Education. Let me get that right. National Center for Science Education. Is that it? That's the big one here in the United States. Oh, way I passed it. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure I got it correct. So the National Center for Science Education, like I said, all of these definitions are coming from them. So allele frequency change, all three of these come from the same source. Population geneticists use a different definition of evolution: a change in allele frequencies among generations. 2A, evolution can be, precisely defined. That's what I'm looking for. As any change in frequency of alleles within a gene pool from one generation to the next. Then 2B, the allele frequency definition of evolution has survived to become the standard definition in textbooks and discussions about evolution. So I think we finally found it, right?
See, I've got a butt in here, John.
Hey, wait a second. Hold on. I'll stop at the end of this. In the very same article, now we're talking about allele frequency change. We're headed back to Ernst Mayr. Like I said, Professor Emeritus, Museum Comparative Zoology at Harvard University. Ernst Mayr, the world's greatest living evolutionary biologist. Stephen Jay Gould. This is in the same paper, by the way. This is in the same source as these definitions, which is belly laughing hilarious. Listen to what he has to say. I pointed out more than a decade ago, 1977, that the reductionist explanation so widely adopted in recent decades, evolution is a change in gene frequency of populations, is not only not explanatory, but is in fact misleading. It's a fraud. And again, in the very same article, listen to this, folks. The allele frequency definition, if adequate, the standard definition from above, the most precise definition from above, the allele frequency definition, if adequate, would leave us unsatisfied that evolution really had been explained. Geneticists have observed in small scale a general resistance of the molecular components of the genome to change from the norm or wild type. For this reason, if any biologist were to be anti-evolutionist, it would typically be one who works at the molecular level, such as a molecular geneticist or biochemist. Hi there, pretender clown muppets. I got you by the friggin' short hairs. And psst, I'm never letting go. Questions, comments?
Go on, Adam.
No.
Don't be scared.
No, because you did it afterwards when I interrupted. I naively thought I was gonna. Just that whole definition, if you scroll back up to it, is just shocking. Precisely defined as a change in frequency. Energy import. It just shocks of anything you want it to be. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any inference. It is just totally wishy-washy, and smacks of a best guess. Do you know what I mean? Oh, it's got something to do with this. So we will stick this definition on it, but in of itself, it doesn't even necessarily imply evolution as you would understand it from the mainstream definition. It's actually just suggesting a change in the frequency of changing the frequency of certain genes being expressed in a population.
What they're trying to do, you see, change in allele frequency. What we're talking about here is, change in eye color, different blood types, change in hair color, earlobes, attached and not detached. See, they use that to grease the skids. They say, well, that's evolution. They use that to grease the skids that everyone knows. Any moron at the beginning of time knows, right? That you can just observe, 3 generations of a family of squirrels and see that there's some changes, right? So they use that as their definition of evolution to now state that you can get friggin' giraffes from bacteria.
So this to me comes back, John, to possibly a bit of the epigenetics that we were talking about, because they're going to respond to certain situations, whatever it is. Epigenetic changes. Sure, if you're thinking about a cow being able to gorge more and their stomachs get bigger, etc., and all the knock-ons, it'd be that kind of change that is knocking on to this, that they're then trying to put causation of real change when it's just, like I say, a well-written program which improves itself, and particularly over time can make improvement modifications from the beginning. So a cow wouldn't need necessarily to have overgorging and stomach distension to be born with slightly larger structure. Do you know what I mean? To me, that level of change is within and demonstrated within there. But again, it's all fine tuning and, more important, fine response to environment that's been already given and already pre-programmed into. And this is the genius of, for me, the DNA code, and what it does is it does pass on information from one organism into the next based on the environmental experience. I think that's demonstrated. I think that's what this kind of stuff is, that genius of the program that's been trying to be passed off as the supposition that fishes can run.
Yeah, but Ernst Mayr, like I said, we don't have to go down, we don't have to chase those trails, right? The king evolutionary biologist said it was horseshit.
Mm.
So let's just leave it, stay where it lays.
Paula, Betty?
Nothing to add.
No, not really.
Outstanding. Can we move on?
Yeah, ready when you are.
Okay, number 3. This is a joke. Evolution, this is the next definition. Evolution is a directional and essentially irreversible process occurring in time. From Julian Huxley and Newman. That's why we love you. Your meticulous attention to excruciating detail, folks. OCD-like. Every friggin' thing is directional and essentially an irreversible process occurring in time. What's it called? It's not rhetorical. What's this called? It's right here. Come on, give it to me. Not a rhetorical. Go ahead, panel. No. Entropy. You guys weren't, maybe getting something to eat or something. I got you. I usually go on a rant. That's all it is. I mean, everyone already knows this. This isn't anything special, for crying out loud. Friggin' clowns. I'm not going to stop here. So the next one, number 4, is I? Who the heck is, I should have kept that up. Who the heck is I? I take the broadest definition, okay? Let's see if we got an I in here. So this is, like I said, this is from this document. I'm looking for an author here, to get this nameless, faceless I. I've read through this document many times. I may have missed it. I'll tell you what, it's usually at the beginning, right? Or what's the other place? Probably at the end, correct? Topics evolution, none gives the address. I don't know where it is. I went to the acknowledgements. Where are they? Acknowledgement. I'm trying to find. He didn't acknowledge himself, obviously. Nope. So this nameless, faceless I prefers the broadest definition of evolution. Here we go again, right? Descent with modification. We already clobbered this thing into the incoherent oblivion above, right? And he also gives a slightly narrow concept. So we got descent with modification and common ancestry again, right? So this is one of those times. This is another definition. This is not from the National Center for Science Education. This is from the University of Evolution, the University of Berkeley. Any citations that I've received over the years, because I don't get citations. These evolutionists never cited anything. But when I do, when the rare time that I do, it's always from these knuckleheads. Let's listen to this. We've defined evolution as descent with modification from a common ancestor, right? Descent with modification, common ancestor, number 4 and 5 above. But exactly what has been modified? Evolution only occurs when there's a change in gene frequency within a population over time. Well, okay. Do I need to go through this again? From Professor Ernst Mayr saying it's not explanatory, it's misleading, your gene frequency nonsense, right? From the paper itself, it's unsatisfied. Allele frequency leaves us unsatisfied. Any molecular geneticist or biochemist laughs at this, right? This is a cluster gaggle, folks, right? The universal common descent of the tree of life. We already went through this. All this nonsensical buffoonery, along with, for example, chromosome 2 fusion, which I pummeled in the P.Z. Myers presentation. Of course, he never responded to that. He's not as dumb as he looks. It's just another fiasco in the never-ending post-hoc observation parade of repackaged evolutionary fallacies. Vestigial structures. These people crack me up with these vestigial structures. You can tell right away they never came within 1,000 miles of an A&P course, right? And they're commenting on vestigial structures. I just laugh at them, just pummel them. Junk DNA, that blew up in their face. Ring species, fossils, punctuated equilibrium. This is non-change change, by the way. Piltdown man, Lenski's E. coli. Yeah, I'm still laughing, by the way. Go ahead and bring that up to me. I triple dog dare you to establish universal common descent or the tree of life. We already been through this, right? We already been through that. It's a begging the question fallacy, formal logical fallacy, also affirming the consequent. I'm not going to do it again. We already been through Dr. Craig Venter's take on the phylogenetic tree of life, right? There's not a tree of life, no tree of life. He's telling you, but you don't listen. You're not reading. You just parrot this stuff. I'll hear this tomorrow. Guaranteed. Right? So I'm going to stop here. The next definition is number 6. So we'll go ahead and stop here. Any questions, comments?
No, I will say that there is a link, though. If people want to challenge any of the stuff that's being said here, you can actually join on the Discord server. So if you if you joined before the show started, you'll have to refresh the page, but if not, you should just be able to open up the info box, and round about the bottom somewhere there should be a link to join via the Discord server. So shortly we'll open up the mics, and if you want to add your opinions, you can feel free to do so. Should we start with Paula?
Yeah, I was waiting for punctuated equilibrium to come up because
Me too.
Also known as the hopeful monster theory.
Right. Yeah. I gave way to you on that one, but I'm smiling. You put it at first. That was the thing I was going to bring up, but I was being courteous and starting with the panel. But you go ahead.
Yeah, it was Stephen Jay Gould is basically grasping at straws with that, because evolution has always been anchored in uniformitarianism and always going from simple to complex, which is a just so story in itself. But they couldn't deal with the fact that there are no transitional fossils to speak of. And so they said, well, sometimes every now and then evolution goes really fast, so it doesn't leave fossils. And the reason we come up with suddenly, we have this certain stage of evolution, and then suddenly it changes with no transition. Oh, it must be punctuated equilibrium, meaning all of a sudden it sped up and a chicken laid an egg and out popped a frog, and that's what they think explains what Stephen Jay Gould tried to come up with to explain the lack of transitional fossils and to account for the fact that uniformitarianism is impossible. The more we learn about the complexity of life and the interdependence of systems, the irreducible complexity, not only within an organism, but also between organisms such as flowers and bees, that have to have evolved in perfect synchronization for billions of years in order to get where they were in tandem, because they depend on each other. And so he makes up these ridiculous theories to try to get over those humps, or they'll have I've heard of the jumping gene theory, where somehow rogue bits of DNA get away from the organism to smash into another one, and voila, there's evolution. It's just sheer desperation. It's laughable.
I think before the show also started rolling, we talked a little bit about living fossils.
Yes, a classic oxymoron.
Do you want to expand on it and just explain what a living fossil is first? If not, I will, but I'd rather you did.
Well, I think that was the coelacanth that I mentioned that they had found in the fossil record and prints of it, and said, see, this is a transition. It's got some extra fins and things on it, and it's going from this simple fish to this more complex whatever. And then they started catching them in the sea alive. And so they made up the term living fossil, which is an oxymoron, because it's either a fossil that's extinct because it's showing you life that superseded other life over slow eons of time, or these things could all have lived at the same time the way they do now. We have coelacanths right now with much more quote unquote complex evolved creatures all at the same time and not in a sequence.
Yeah, I was going to say in that the point that it was supposed to be one of the sequential species on a path to more refined fish. It was passed off as that, and therefore when it does pop up in South Indian Ocean and people start pulling them over boats and they realise they're worth a few quid, they suddenly realise they're all over the place. Because it's not until the first one gets discovered that suddenly all these poor Indian fishermen that have this big fish that tastes like shit, suddenly it's worth a load. So suddenly loads of them start popping up, and it's just truth that this sequential chain of evolution is bunkum. Crocodiles and alligators were the one that always confused me as a kid.
That's what I was going to come on to.
Sorry.
Well, no, I don't want to steal the panel's thunder. This is just a good bit of the show, right? So you carry on.
The one as a little boy, when I had my little Ladybird book of dinosaurs, you always had the most basic of creatures. You had the spazzy fish, didn't you, with little arms coming out, and after that, you've got your alligators and crocodiles, and then you get your more complex dinosaur paraphernalia. After that, again spazzy armed T-Rexes. What's up with? But it was the placement of those that actually somehow they've They appear in the fossil record all the way through, yet they haven't changed at all, which just seems a little odd to me.
It seems almost like they deliberately work it into a lot of mainstream narratives as well. They'll almost overemphasize the fact that they're living fossils, so that it's normalized. You know, it's an awkward stumbling block in reality for this nonsense, but they'll just over normalize it by talking about it a lot. It seems to me, especially with crocodiles.
They do that with sharks too, that these are so primitive, you know, and they just make the stuff up as they go along. But another thing I wanted to mention real quick is the viable blood cells in dinosaur bones that they found, that is supposedly very ancient rock, that these things should have solidified and petrified eons ago, but they're not. And the lady, I forget her name, Schweitzer, Marilyn Schweitzer, or somebody like that.
I did a whole presentation on this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, she caught an awful lot of grief for being a scientist, you know, and saying, look, these are actual blood cells. I did my experiments properly. I did my, you know, procedures and didn't get contamination. And they just, you know, vilified her for reaching a scientific conclusion over it. And because of their religious zealotry to defend this unfalsifiable theory of evolution above all costs.
There were follow-up ones, not just the blood cells. There was lots where they took what they thought was other older stuff and just dissolved the mineral content of the bones, and there was still collagen fibers existing within the bones, which again contradicts the supposed timeline of millions of years for these things. It was still elastic. There was still gel structure to it. What was left once this slowly dissolved, all the, like I say, all the mineral content was still some, just like with the T-Rex plus, some biological material.
We may run that presentation on here. We haven't talked about that yet, but we can talk about that one, Nathan.
You might, but the BBC buried it. If you try and search, it was all over the BBC when it first came out. I'm really interested.
No, I got Dr. Mary Schweitzer on the Non-Sec show back in the day.
Yeah. No, what I mean is it's interesting the BBC have got rid of that rather groundbreaking clip themselves. It's like,
yeah. Well, what else are they going to do?
Yeah.
We can talk about that.
I actually reran it on this channel. I'm going to go and get a link for it right now and put it into the show so people can have it. But I would be more than happy to do that again. I think I replayed the one that you did with cathexis.
Yeah, that's correct. I did one against Dr. Mary Schweitzer and the other one against P.Z. Myers.
Yeah, I think I might have mirrored both of them, but I'm putting the Schweitzer one in now. I'll just do a quick shout out. Thank you very much, AV Rabbit, for the super chat. Really appreciate your support. Yeah, I've stuck it in the chat, so if you want to go and check it out, I've put a link there for you to go to now if you're in the audience live.
All right, we're going to move on?
I think so, unless Paula or Betty have got anything else to add.
No, nothing.
Nope.
Yeah, you're on. Ready when you are.
Okay, narrower still, number 6, biological evolution. This is going to be quick. Is a change of the properties of populations of organisms that transcend the lifetime of a single individual. The ontogeny of an individual is not considered evolution. Individual organisms do not evolve. Whatever that is. We haven't figured that out yet. The changes in populations that are considered evolutionary are those that are inheritable via the genetic material from one generation to the next. Biological evolution may be slight or substantial. It embraces everything from slight changes in the portion of what? Different alleles within a population, such as determining blood types, like we already talked about, to the successive alterations that led from the earliest proto-organisms to snails, bees, giraffes, and dandelions. This is from Fudayama. So we already been over allele frequency change. I don't think we need to talk to it again. And this is just the fairy tale phylogenetic tree of life again, or common descent. So I'm not going to go over those things again. I did it twice above. I think you get the gist. Okay, on to Betty's topic. Remember, she brought up predictions, right? So this is Carol V. Ward, paleoanthropologist from the University of Missouri, just up the street from me here, in Experts Tackle Questions of How Humans Will Evolve. And this is from Scientific American. Listen to this closely, folks. You ready? Evolution is not a process that allows us to predict what will happen in the future. We can see what happened in the past only. Is this clear? All right. What I want you guys to do, if you disagree with her, I got her email address right here. Ward, capital C as in Charlie, V as in Victor, at missouri.edu. Just go ahead and email her, or you can call her up. 573-882-0558. That's in her office for further clarification. If you do, can you put the substance of this discussion? Can you write it up? I'd like to hear it. And I'd like to see the hypothesis. You know, scientific predictions are hypotheses, scientific hypotheses. So to have a scientific prediction, you got to have a hypothesis. Okay? I want to see the hypothesis. So crocheting is more scientific than evolution. This is one of my favorites right here. Let's take it. I'm going to circle back on this. Let me just read through it. This is Franklin Harold, Professor Emeritus Biochemistry at Colorado State University. You know, I should see my wife graduated from Colorado State University. I should ask her if she knew him. I'm going to do it. After the show, I'll do it. The Way of the Cell, Molecules, Organisms, and the Order of Life from Oxford University Press. Listen to this. We should reject, as a matter of principle, the substitution of intelligent design for the dialogue of chance and necessity. We must concede that there are presently no detailed Darwinian accounts of the evolution of any biochemical or cellular system, only a variety of wishful speculations. I mean, my word, people. He's telling you straight up. This is the one that I already knew all this. This is the one that stood out to me. We should reject that just as a matter of principle. A priori, just hand wave dismiss right out of hand intelligent design. Nope. Can't have any of that. We don't want to see that. We're going to close our eyes, stick our fingers in our ears, la, 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 right? That's what he's talking about here. This is a joke. In conclusion, the most scientifically validated theory in the history of man, evolution, has no science in it whatso friggin' ever. None. It can't even be defined. It has more definition than Babe Ruth has home runs, making it, at the very best, a clumsy shape-shifting equivocation fallacy. That's it. That's all you got. Thanks for your ear. Have a nice day.
Cool. Nice presentation, John. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
There is a link, so if you do want to join during the next, I don't know, 10 minutes while we round out the show, you can challenge us, and the way to do so is click the link in the Discord server, to get into the Discord server, I should say. As such, there is nobody in there at the moment, as far as I can see, so undoubtedly the Peanut Gallery will get in touch after the fact, even though there's a couple of hundred people almost watching. Any finishing comments? We might not get anybody challenging you at all today, John, you never know.
Oh, that'll be too bad.
Betty.
Yeah, I thought about the predictions. The predictions that they allude to are the ones, I think, that are also lie in history, right? In these fossil geographic situations in fossils. They never predict what we are going to look like in the future, but they always predict in hindsight of things. So it's funny.
Is that a scientific prediction?
No. I remember that I once made a comment underneath one of Aaron Ra's videos, because he said that evolution used the scientific method, and he went all about it. And I asked him your questions that you set up above, I think. What's evolution? And all post two scientific experiments and stuff. And he only gave me the the bit of the allele frequencies, I remember. And he never gave me two examples. And then all these other people that went over this video commented on me and just trying to see what kind of person I was, because I was dishonest for asking them these questions, and it was all clear what I was on about. And they even went to my channel to see what kind of other videos I had up, and so it seems to me that these people don't look at this honestly. They just want to have a sort of a priest to follow and not be really skeptical about it. That's what I got from it. And he never gave me two scientific the scientific method of any example. So it was a kind of a tell.
Did he post the scientific theory?
Yeah, it was a short thing that it came down to what you already said.
Oh, the allele frequency change. You already said that. Sorry about that. Yep.
Yeah. That's the only thing that he came up with. And when I asked more of these questions, and other people came and they never clarified it for me. I just got attacked basically because if I was that critical, then I should read this and read that, and they elephant hurl you with all these papers and documents, and it never gives you any experiments that they did. They don't give you anything of the scientific method.
Right. They ad hom you and then go see who you're subscribed to, and then make fun of your favorite color. Yeah.
And then you're Fundy Zealot or whatever. That's so funny.
Yeah, that's really mature.
Yeah.
Great arguments. They probably went to Stanford Law. Clowns.
Yeah.
Shout out to Yuya for smashing the super chat. Thank you very much indeed for your support. Still nobody in the Discord server. Nobody going to challenge anything that's been said. If you want to, click the link in the info box below the video. Paula, this might be your closing statements. We shall see.
I think shape-shifting is really the root or overall summary of the whole thing, because people like to say they take pride in the fact that science is always changing. Well, that applies to discoveries. It does not apply to just so stories. You can't keep changing your just so story because you can't falsify it and then think that this is somehow an improvement and that science is marching forward, because it isn't. It's often, like anything else in history, is 2 steps forward, 1 step back at best. And gained and lost civilizations and recovering. It's a cycle. It's not a progression as uniformitarian wants it to be. And so when they say that this theory can't be pinned down, well, yeah, that's why it's unfalsifiable, and why it isn't even a scientific theory, and why it's just a just so story, and why anybody should believe it is beyond me. And the tell, to use John's term there, is that they are religiously defending this like you insulted their mother if you disagree with it, in spite of the fact that they're proud that it changes all the time. If it changes all the time, then what is scientific truth today will be a laughingstock tomorrow. So why do they get so upset if you don't believe what they currently believe today? It's the tell, because if they know it's going to change, why do they invest so much emotional energy into it and get upset if you don't agree with them? It's the indication that they know this is just a story, and they like their story, and they don't like it if you don't believe their story.
Adam?
Yeah, John, can you just scroll down to Professor Franklin for me? I just state that. I think that's fantastic. We should reject, as a matter of principle, the substitution of intelligent design for the dialogue of chance and necessity. We must concede there are presently no detailed Darwinian accounts of evolution of any biochemical or cellular system. And that's, the important bit for me. that on the most fundamental levels, we've not spotted anything. The things that led to all of that, and I've quite enjoyed, John. You took us through quite a nice bit of detail on all of those processes, and yeah, great presentation, mate. Thanks, I enjoyed it.
You're welcome.
Cool. There was some hint that the Discord link might have been broken, but I put a new one out there, so we'll give it maybe another minute or so. If nobody joins, we'll round out, and we might get some people chatting to us about random subjects in the after show. So I know in the last Ballbusters we were quite explicit to say no, we don't want to discuss flat Earth and such. However, if somebody did want to join after we've rounded out and we end up discussing random subjects, that's absolutely fine. You'll just have to tune into that. And the after show in Nathan Oakley channel, subscribe below. So yeah, I agree. Absolutely great presentation. Really, really enjoyed it. Very, very succinct. As concise as you can be in this convoluted mess of nonsense that is evolution.
Yeah, you got to tear away from the background noise and just go with the questions. I mean, if you ever any discussions like that, just use those questions. Is my screen still up? Maybe I could put those.
Yeah.
Go back up there. Just these questions right here. That's all you need. They'll be flummoxed. And like I said, you can't get the 3 and 4. That's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to overwhelm you. They're not going to give you any experiments, right? They're going to give you the whole bunch of just so stories. Evolution, whether it be homology, vestigial structures, they're going to go with peeled down. There's thousands of them, right? That's what they're going to try to do, but don't let them do that. See, when you're trying to prove something, you must first define that which you're trying to prove. And in science, before you come up with a scientific theory, you have to be able to define it. I know it's shocking. And to have a scientific thing, you can't give anything without the scientific theory. You need these guys first. So it's a cluster gaggle. Don't let them go. I gave you all the answers you need in this presentation to just pummel any answer they have here. So I hope you use them.
Hey, John, one more thing.
Sure.
Vestigial. Vestigial.
Vestigial.
From the word vestige.
Yeah, these people, they crack me up. They've never gotten within 1,000 miles of an A&P course, right? Adam. Adam, you know what I'm talking about.
I always say to my students that I'm training, when they say, how do you pronounce this word? How do you say that? I say it with confidence and move on. And it's very rare you'll get picked up.
No, they've never been with an A&P course, anatomy and physiology. I mean, this stuff that they bring up, it's so old. It's like 40 or 50 years old, the stuff that they're parroting. It's a joke. I was sitting there when I first, when I first got into this genre, I'm listening to them talking about the structure, and I'm saying, are you people insane? Are you just making stuff up? Because any anatomy and physiology course, they'd be laughing at you. So, hey, give me hey, Nathan, give me a minute. I'll be back in about a minute. Okay.
Oh, I'm going to round out the live show. Sure.
You going to round it out now?
Well, yeah, we're going to have an after show. This is my opportunity to say if you're watching this on the Nathan Oakley, not 1980, just the Nathan Oakley stream, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. However, a massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of the live audience in Nathan Oakley 1980 for tuning in, smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Of course, a massive thank you to Paula, Betty, Adam, and Quantum Eraser for making this Ballbusters possible. I've been Nathan Oakley. If you need to keep yourself occupied after the live stream is over, go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum. I'll see you in the next Ballbusters. Right, we're into the after show now, so hopefully... I don't know why we didn't get anybody at all in the Discord server for that show.
I see Chocolate in there, but...
Is Chocolate in there now?
Else
Let's raise the mic on him.
Yeah. And I'll be right back, too.
Okay.
Yeah, there was one guy in here, and he says that he doesn't want to go to the live stream because he says the conversation is crap, to say the least. I'm just reading it out loud, right? So I heard the guy at the start of the live stream say there's no evidence of evolution and say there is 4 questions that have never been answered. I answered them and I was ignored. But it does not matter if anyone answered them, as those idiots will not believe any evidence put in front of them. So that's what we got. And I said to him, well, this is your time and go join, and we would like to have people who ask these questions. So we love to hear you. So I hope that Highland 3R80 is going to come on anyway. But yeah, he can't hear the live stream anymore. But I hope that he will come on and will say what he has to say.
Got Chocolate in there. Can I at least get a hello from Chocolate? See if do you have to unmute him for him to speak?
Yeah, I already did, but he muted himself.
Ah, he's disappeared.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, you'll have to pop yourself on mute in either Discord or Skype, Betty. Perfect. Yeah. Hey, Chocolate.
Hello.
Hey. At least we can show the after show audience we do actually have a Discord server. It's not just made up.
Yeah.
Evening, Chocolate.
I was in here before. Hey, what's up, Adam?
Oh, good, bro.
I was in here before, but I left and came back.
You're generally on our side, though, with most of these arguments. I saw you in the chat with a lot of really cracking... It warmed my heart. It really did, Chocolate, seeing you in there. What model? Show me the model. Yeah, I'll have a look to that. Great stuff.
Yeah, that one guy, he just kept talking about a model, and I'm like, I'm not asking about a model. Just where's the curvature on the actual Earth? I don't care about your model. But they don't seem to like that.
That was it. You said something like, natural world, that's where I'm at. That's what it's all about. That's what I'm interested in. I can't remember how you phrased it, but it's much more succinct. But I don't know, we kind of like chat trolls when we're talking flat Earth, but only if you've got like
I actually enjoy it.
I enjoy it too.
Sometimes I actually do I enjoy being a bit of a troll just because there are things about their model that are so ridiculous, and then when I say that to them, they want to call me stupid, but I'm like, wait, but you're telling me that this is what I'm supposed to believe, but now that you hear it coming from me, now it sounds stupid. How does that work? So,
just to let you know, I'm back.
Thanks. I was just about to compliment you. I was going to say a lot of these arguments have been honed by John. So most of the arguments, not all of them, but most of them we had or knew about or were aware of or had heard someone else verbalise before. But I remember before housekeeping got formed, Anthony was like, we've got to get this like a series of proofs together for the beginning of the debate to put out there. And then John, me and Anthony kind of honed those questions. They're not even questions. Most of them are sort of statements with the answer as part of the statement anyway. Do you know what I mean? How can you have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container? That's not really a question, isn't it? It's malformed at best. It's answering itself at worst, or the other way around. So those questions have been really, really well formed, and they work well in a chat feed, right? When you see this, when you see them scrolling by, how can you have gas pressure without a container? Works really well in however many characters. They give you 200 characters, right?
Sarcastic.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people in random chats I'll go into, and they're spitting the housekeeping questions, like in the same order. Like, it would be one thing if it was just a coincidence, one question, but it would be like all the questions in a row in some random chat. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Got a couple of other people in the Discord server. Do you want to open the mic on Chow Young Cat? Smash super chat twice. At least love to say hello to her. Thank you very much for the super chat. If you can hear me.
Yeah, I muted him. He muted himself.
Oh, okay. And the other
he's typing now. So, but we also have Kosho here. So.
Hey, Kosho.
Howdy.
You into evolution? I know we were back on Flat Earth straight away. I didn't see you in the Discord server. Is this a subject that's warmed close to your heart in any way, or is it not something you get into?
No, it is. Biology's actually always been like the science I've been the least involved with growing up, but recently I got more into it, and I mean honestly, when I dove into it, a lot of the stuff that seemed like mysterious or bizarre to me, it became kind of like it fit together. So it's like I can actually see how something like evolution, even abiogenesis, could be possible.
You're out of your mind.
Oh. I mean, if you break it down to just chemical reactions, then yeah.
Well,
I don't see it happening more than once.
Reactions. Boy, that's deep. I'll tell you what. Give us some chemical reactions for the construction of a 30-mer RNA or protein from its constituents, please. Please.
Yeah,
Can we share his screen?
I'm sorry, I couldn't begin to tell you, but I do know that they run off those electron transfer. There's some electron transfer that goes on with them. So it seems like they just have connections, and those copies that they do are just basically like reactions that are, like I said, they're chemical reactions that we know about. And so it could seem that over time, you know, the ones that were advantageous develop.
Let me tell you, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but you know what you sound like to me?
Yeah.
A frigging clown.
Okay.
You have no idea what you're taught. Where are you getting this from, Wiki? Tell me something.
This is from
you know what an oxidation reduction reaction is? Now, let's try something simple. Let's go with something simpler. Let's go with, please describe a condensation reaction to me.
Condensation reaction. So I have to tell you that I'm not an expert in biology. That's what I started out by saying. I've only researched it.
Why are you talking to me then?
I was asked about what I thought.
Where'd you get your science acumen from? A Cracker Jack box?
So can I ask Kosho, do you think evolution is a real thing? Like,
unbelievable. Sorry, Nathan, but this is ridiculous.
Absolutely. So
we know, like
primordial fish soup people. That's real.
Well, no, fish are a totally different animal. But genetic mutations are absolutely involved in science. Like doctors know about this. It's something that
do they? Where'd you get genes from? Where'd you get genes from naturally?
Yeah, my parents.
No. Where did okay, your parents. Okay, then your grandparents. Then we're going to shoot all the way back to the beginning, to where there was no life, just chemicals. I want you to tell me how you can even get a 30-mer RNA from its constituents.
Well, I saw something once. The RNA is very complicated, and there's so many machines in there. But I saw something once with the cell wall and how it's possible for that to be formed. Like I said, like chemical process.
Really? What are some of the constituents of a cell wall?
Similar to a diamond. Say again?
What are the constituents of a biological cell membrane, please?
Yeah, I forget the actual constituents, but I remember the process was something that had to do with like the temperatures down below and the pressures. And because like the same thing with dipolar, like the water's dipole, how one side of the molecule will be opposed to the other side, and so they just happen to have this magnetic quality. It was like something like that, and over time the ones that were kind of advantageous would stick together and they would create a protective wall, which would lead for more reactions, basically.
That's a great story. What a wonderful story. Do you know that the second law of thermodynamics is proportional to time?
Yeah. Well,
that means the more time, the higher the entropy. Right?
That's right.
Right. So you're talking about lowering entropy. How are you doing that?
No. See, cells die because of
Yeah.
entropy, and people die
We're not
because of
talking about
entropy.
cells. We're talking about before cells. You said cellular
Yeah, I
membrane.
mean, most
so
cells were unsuccessful.
you have to have a cellular membrane, right? So where'd you get the cellular membrane first? What, you don't even know what it's made of. It's
Like I told
it's
you,
like
chemical reaction.
chemical reactions.
These forces
Wow.
can.
Really? You
No,
don't
I'll
even
see if
know
I can
what they're
find the
made
video
of.
that I saw.
I mean, this is a joke. This is a joke. Hey, Adam, do you want to?
You brought up something.
I can't do this. Adam, maybe.
Well,
you
no,
can.
hold on. I wanted to ask you because you brought up condensation, something or other. What were
I don't mean to be rude. I really don't. I don't. But you're asking for it. You're asking me to start clubbing you, right?
No, if
I
you
mean,
don't
do
want to
you
be
think
rude,
this
then
is
just
jokes?
share the thing that you asked me.
Do you think this
What's
is
up, Sarky?
jokes? Do you think I'm up here joking when you come in here half-stepping? I mean, you wouldn't know what chemistry
A
was
little
if
bit,
it landed
because
on your
I
face,
didn't
spun
insult
around,
you.
and whistled Dixie, right? We all know that. Everyone knows that. The audience knows that. The panel knows that. I definitely know that. But you just go on and on and on and on, right?
I mean, I answered your question. That's all, and then I asked you one. If you're interested in the video I was talking about, I'll post it in the chat. And if you'd like to talk about that, it's fine. Or just tell me what the name. Look it up.
So, Kosho, when you say evolution, you believe that's a real thing, right? So you said genetic mutation.
That's right.
We're talking about evolution, like the millions of years evolution. Like, you believe that that's what's going on here?
Well, I think that definitely would give you a greater effect, but the way that helps me is like when I think about the abiogenesis and that kind of thing, that's a lot more hard to believe, whereas genetic mutations are known about. And so every time a baby is born, every time they reproduce, there will be some genetic mutations. And what happens is most of those are detrimental, they're random, but every once in a while, one of those genetic mutations will be advantageous in such a way that that gene will be able to reproduce more, live longer, whatever the case may be, or have a better chance of living longer, into which case it'd be more likely that gene gets passed on. And so just by understanding that, you could see that it's inevitable that over time the genes would change drastically.
Drastically to the point where things will literally adapt to what's going on in their environment, and then somehow their genes will change and they will pass that on, and that change will occur in further generations of that.
This is just nonsense, man. What is this evolution?
I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. I mean, I'm trying to understand where he's coming from with this.
Why?
Well, what you just said though, would be.
Did you define evolution yet?
I'm going to answer his question real quick. This is what you said about the adaptive quality of it. I think it's more of, like I said, like you take a situation and the ones
John,
that
I'm
are
asserting that we came from plants instead of apes. How's that sound?
right. So the ones that are more likely to not survive or not to produce, they're going to die, and that gene's going to die over time. Like the same with the people who are alive right now who aren't reproducing. And then the people that are, it's not that they adapt to the situation. It's just that the ones that are already geared for it are going to be more likely to reproduce.
That's the key. Already have. How is that evolution if they already have a beneficial gene? How is that evolution? It's already there. It's just eliminating the competition. I mean, selection means taking a subset.
Hold on. There's two you talking. So the question, Kosho, is if it's already there, how is it evolution?
Well, that's what I'm saying is the random genetic mutations that would add any change. But most of the time, that change is not helpful in any way, and sometimes detrimental. But every once in a while, that genetic mutation can make it advantageous, so much so that it's more likely for this gene to be passed on.
The reason that isn't evolution is, for example, when antibiotics are overused and bacteria develop a resistance, they call that evolution, but it isn't, because some bacteria are already always resistant. And so what you do with your antibiotics is kill off the competitors. And so the ones with that feature multiply, and that's why they're resistant. But the problem is, a lot of times that mutation is actually a reduction of complexity. That means the antibiotics are designed to take advantage of a certain characteristic of the organism. Well, if it loses that characteristic through mutation or whatever, it's less complex. That's why the antibiotic doesn't work anymore, because it lost the feature. So just because a change or mutation happens doesn't mean you're going more complex. It means you're getting less complex.
No, hold on, Kosha. Before you go further, there's two variables I'm saying. Antibiotics, is that plant-based, and is bacteria plant-based?
Plant-based.
It can be.
Doesn't.
We're breaking up.
How is that?
I need. We're talking about antibiotics. Are we talking about, is that plant-based, or is it some kind of a anaerobic or?
Take penicillin. Take penicillin, for example. I think it's a fungus. But yeah, so. And what you said was exactly how evolution is basically the same thing I described, which is not something that is made just so that it can beat that antibiotic. It's actually the ones that just happen to have a mutation that could overcome that antibiotic. Those are the only ones that survived. So all the other ones died, and only those ones survived by.
But we're deterring the fact bacteria now. Now the point is bacteria plant-based, or part of it's congruent to a plant system, or anaerobic, which what we're creating? I don't know.
I think in the tree of like the little tree thing, I think those are three different things. I have to check real quick.
Well, the point I was trying to make is that just because a change like that might happen doesn't mean you're evolving up into more complex. You may be going down. And statistically, if you've ever taken a statistics course and you do the coin flipping experiment, the more coin flips you have, the closer you get to equilibrium, which is no change at all. You don't go forward, you don't go back, you get 50-50. And so time is the enemy of evolution and natural selection, because you have more trials. The more and more trials you get, the closer you get to equilibrium, because there is no direction up or down necessarily. It could go up one generation, down the next. And after a bazillion years, you get no movement at all, no evolution. So time is actually the enemy, and selection doesn't help that.
You said that about the it going up or down. There's actually no rule for that, like for it becoming more complex and maybe the smartest or the strongest. The only rule is that it was more likely for this thing to survive and reproduce.
Right. So survival itself is not evolution. Evolution changes.
Well, you have to be alive to.
Huh? See, the thing is, if evolution is change, then if no change happens, it's not evolution. And if you have a no net change, some more complex, some less complex, and the more time that happens, the closer you get to 50-50 equilibrium, then it is not evolution. Changes can happen all day long, but it's not evolution because it has no direction. So time and selection are actually the enemies of a directional change, which is what evolution claims.
Yeah, I've never heard a claim like that before, but I have my genome, and it's a very long list of information. So I know that they're very complicated, how variant they are. So I think for what you're saying to be true, like if the random mutations that happen, for them to eventually be the same thing, I think would take an ungodly amount of time.
Right. And some people have calculated that for like an organism with only 100 parts, which is lower than any known life form, to evolve by trial and error. Statistically, it would take longer than the number of molecules in the known supposed by the standard model universe. So it's a fairy tale. It's absolute belief in magic when it comes down to it.
Well, no, you just debunk your own the issue that you have with it, because just like you said, that's how long that would take for them to equal out. But for things to happen, random things to happen, there's no probability towards that, unless you were able to predict what happened and then it happened. But everything that's happened, all those mutations are random.
No, I'm saying for just mathematically, the time it would take to make 100 component organism to try every possible combination. If you tried, and they calculated so many trials and errors per second or whatever it is, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about there being a direction. I'm just saying for trial and error, since there is no direction, to come up with a simple, ultra simple life form would never happen no matter how much time you gave it, especially because there's no direction. It'll just keep going back and forth forever and reach equilibrium. So I'm not contradicting what I said at all. I'm just reinforcing it.
If what you're saying about the 100, which is there's more, of course, but with that number, each one of those combinations would equal out to some bit of information. So each of those things would kind of be life in themselves. Most of them, you're right, would be not useful, but if a couple of them have the ability to continue living, like they had some quality that made it easy for them to consume something else or something like that. That's how I imagine the first cells to
it sounds to me like you're saying that
let me just say one more thing.
She said that it would take as long as it would, and it has taken that long, that it has happened. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. I was actually completely saying that there's no like she said that it would. There's I think 4 to the 100th power chances to make this specific one. Well, there's just because it didn't make this one and it made that one, it still made one each time. So I don't see why you would need to go through all of them.
But that's what she's saying, that there's no evolution because it goes back and forth. It
Right.
reaches an equilibrium. There's no advancement.
Yeah,
but and as far as when it comes to what is advantageous, it depends on the environment, and that can change back and forth. So a change or mutation that's beneficial for now may not be in a couple generations, and then those will die out again, and you're back to where you started.
Yeah, this is what happens. This is why there's been like 5 extinctions supposedly throughout history, the complete history, and it's for the exact thing that you just said. And just like after the dinosaurs died, the mammals and the birds and stuff, they were able to come out from where they were, and it was advantageous for them.
So how does evolution happen when the more time and the more trials that you have, the closer you get to no movement either way? How does evolution in a direction from simple to complex happen?
Well, see, that whole concept I don't agree with, because you said even to the 4 to the 100th power, that would take longer than the amount of atoms in the universe.
Which proves it's impossible. You can try
to come to equilibrium.
Yeah, equilibrium is no movement at all, ergo no evolution.
And maybe I'm a little bit lost then, because it seems like that wouldn't happen, the no movement thing.
Well, could we be in a constant?
It's just, like I said, if you do a trial, flip a coin, if you do it 10 times, you might get 7 heads and 4 tails, or 3 tails. But if you flip it 100 times, you're going to find out that you reach almost equality, very close to 50-50. And the same thing with trials of life trying to evolve, life just combining and recombining. The more it does it for the longer time, the less it is going to move from simple to complex, because it's going back and forth, forward and backwards all the time. So evolution is impossible.
Yeah, but so I see what's going on. So once you have a genome, for example, like my genome, if there is a mutation, in any of those genes, it's not going to be the whole thing at all. It'll be like the little piece here or there, or whatever the case may be.
So the problem of irreducible complexity comes in there from what you're saying, because you can't go, say, from a gill to a lung in 1 or 2, or you even 5,000 steps, because you have to have a system, all the parts, like for cardiovascular, to have lungs, you have to have a heart, you have to have a circulatory system, you have to have all the things, the lungs have to function, and they have to, push air in and out. That whole thing is a very complex system. And to go from gills to that, how do you have an intermediary between those two? And none have ever been found. So how do you do that? I mean, what's the mechanism?
I mean, I don't, like I said, I'm not going to pretend to know, like anybody doesn't know exactly how life began. We're really just trying to find investigate and find the evidence. But I mean, I just agree. I agree with what they found so far. That's all.
Okay, well, I don't. So
then
there we
it's a
are.
story that you believe in, huh?
Well, it's
like I said, an investigation that I believe in. The same thing with the crime scene, that nobody witnessed the murder, but all we can do is kind of go back and do the best to investigate.
That's not science. That's not science. Forensic science, they just stuck the science on the end of it. It's not science.
There's no body in this crime scene. Where's the body?
Yeah, where are the transitions?
I'm saying that it's not science. Forensic science is not science.
It's a probability at best.
Probability doesn't have anything to do with the scientific. That's induction. Has nothing to do with it.
What's a better method that you think to find the answer to that question then?
It's not science. I mean, you could find how many people have been exonerated by forensics.
No. What do you mean?
Okay.
Are you asking him what the best process for validating evolution is? Are you asking him what the best process might be?
Evolution. I mean, simply like how, like if the question was how did life begin? How did we get here?
No.
And I say the best.
That's not the question. The question is, what is evolution?
If you're asking that question, then you're already starting from, I agree with it, or I know it's a thing.
If I ask what
isn't it supposed to be a thing?
If I say what's the chemical? Hold on. If I say what's hold on. If I say what's the chemical composition of unicorn farts, does that automatically mean that I believe in them then, Kosho?
Well, it means that you're investigating them because there's some. Unless you're just a silly person.
No, I'm not. I assure you, I'm definitely not investigating the chemical composition of unicorn farts. So let's just assume that by me asking you what evolution is, that doesn't automatically I not only believe in it, but know what it is. So you tell me, what is it?
Well, like I said, evolution would be like the process over time of genetic mutations turning evolving from one for different complex life forms.
This is really concise, Kosho. Thanks. That's made things so much clearer.
Actually, you're asking this question, but I think you misinterpreted what I was saying, because I wasn't saying what's the answer to the question.
No problem. Scratch all of that. I'll edit it out. So, what is evolution, Kosho?
Excuse me?
We'll take three. So I'll pretend that didn't happen.
Pretend that didn't happen.
Pretend it didn't happen. We'll just start fresh. Pretend none of that happened. Kosho. So what is evolution? So it's nice and clean. I just want a nice clean section. So nice pause. So Kosho, what is evolution?
Like I said, in my words, someone who's not in the field of biology, I'd say it's just the process of genetic mutations and an answer to the question of how did we get here and how did life begin, from single cells all the way up to how complex human beings are. From an outside of biology perspective.
Kind of got a bit too far away from your mic there, so it cut out halfway through.
Oh, sorry, it must be my push a talk button. But yeah, I think that it's it's definitely the study to answer the question of how did we get here, how did life get here, and the answer that they say is, like I said, genetic mutations over time. They select the survival of the fittest, that kind of thing. The best or the better, the most advantageous genes over time become more probable. If that answers your question.
Not really. So let's start with, let's start with the first one. So you said genetic mutation. So what's that? I mean, I've watched X-Men, but you laid that out for me.
Like I said, I'm not a geneticist either, but as far as I know, even each time your cells make copies, but let's say when you're reproducing, when your sperm meets with the egg and those cells combine, in that process, even some of those cells are actually randomly changed. I think I read something that might have something to do with quantum mechanics, but they might not know exactly how those genetic mutations come about, but they're just random mutations. And those mutations are obviously going to be an error in the code or something different in the code to which something different can happen. And sometimes those differences can be advantageous, in which case they would have a better chance of reproducing.
I'm not quite following you. So, I mean, that's great because I can kind of follow along because everything's quantum mechanical. So great, link that back to quantum mechanics. Marvelous.
Well, I mean, I don't even remember. I remember reading that in an article. And I think it was only a hypothesis. It wasn't even. I'm not sure if how well it was tested.
I dig it out. Wonderful hypothesis, you say? Wow. See, John, it didn't take long. We're straight into hypothesis and experimentation. This is wonderful, Kosho.
Sure.
So what is it? What's the hypothesis and what did they do to validate it?
Like I said, I don't even remember. I just remember vaguely reading that. But that was my question originally was because you guys were saying something about evolution and scoffing at it. I was saying if you take away evolution and you take away using the scientific process to answer the question of how did we get here, that I was asking what method would you use to answer that same question?
Oh, you're asking a question that only has two answers. So we're into the ontological primitives here.
I think it's a false dichotomy, though.
Oh, really?
What's the third choice?
Sorry, go ahead, John.
What's the third choice then?
Well, there'd be a countless amount of choices. It depends on what the actual answer is.
Give me
Hold on. We've got an audience. We've got an audience.
I agree with evolution.
Kosho, what are the ontological primitives? You say that's a false dichotomy. So what is the false dichotomy in your view?
I've heard it described as like either evolution existed or someone created life. Someone created all different kinds and everything, and that's the.
Well, it's either intelligent design or everything from nothing.
It's either intelligent design or nature.
My bad. Nature or
If
intelligent
that was
design.
the case, I'd pick nature.
You'd pick nature. So if you're going with nature as your choices, you're then bound by the natural laws. You would appreciate that, right? If it's existing in nature, it's going to comply with the natural laws. Would you agree?
Yeah, it should. It has to. That's why I choose that one.
Right. What's the first law of thermodynamics, Kosho?
If I'll go from memory, I think it's just that all the energy in the system, it's not going to be created or destroyed. So it's whatever exists in that system is whatever exists. I think when they say that, they mean the whole universe. So no energy is created.
So that would be a natural law, wouldn't it, Kosho? That craps all over the idea of everything coming from nature.
No, it doesn't crap over nature. But yeah, what do you mean by that?
What's the first law? Repeat it, and then understand what that means.
Yeah, I'll say in just one sentence. No energy can be created or destroyed.
So how did it create itself?
How did life create itself?
Yeah, you're saying nature. You said everything came from nature, right? First law of thermodynamics violation, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
If it can't create,
Yeah, everything
how
came
did
from
nature create itself?
Before there was ever any life, there were chemical reactions.
Oh my god!
So it's not like a mystery or anything like that. Like that's not a huge step.
You just stop talking and answer his questions, please.
I did.
You didn't answer his
Just
question.
answered it.
No, you didn't.
Hey, ask it again.
The question
See if it makes
is,
sense.
how did? Are you going to shut up? How did nature create itself?
Right, and so the answer that I just gave you, that you seem to not have put together with what you asked, was that that's not that big of a jump, because it's not that nature creates itself. It's that there were already chemical reactions.
Say that again.
Even
It's
when there's
not.
no life.
Sorry, you said it's not that nature creates itself. So not everything from nature, then.
Well, no. What I mean by that is it's not in the way that you're trying to express it.
I'm not.
It sounds like you're trying to make it.
I'm
sound
not
like
trying to
life.
express it, Kosho. You are.
No, well, like I'm saying, like these life in its most basic, even in your body right now, the biology, it's all chemical processes.
That's lovely.
Those chemical
Kosho,
processes
that's
existed.
fascinating. So, option one, nature created it. Yeah? And therefore bound by natural law. And it can't create itself. So, no, that clearly isn't possible, is it?
No, it is. Chemical process happen regardless.
You're holding two mutually exclusive truths at the same time. That violates the law of non-contradiction.
Do you understand?
What are those two things that are...
Kosho, do you understand what's just been explained? You're holding two mutually exclusive positions at the same time. Do you know what the two positions are?
And I'm asking you to name them.
No, I've just asked you if you know what the contradiction is. So you're saying no, I don't know what the
I'm telling you that I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm asking you if you could tell me what you think I'm contradicting.
That's obvious.
We can carry on our back.
Kosho, you're saying that nature created itself at the same time that you're saying nothing can be created or destroyed.
Okay. So what I said was energy cannot be created or destroyed. The energy and everything is there already.
So then where did it come from?
Hold on. Everything's... Sorry. It's already there.
If you're going to take my words and you're going to twist them, that's one thing. But if you just simply ask me to clarify, then that'll be better.
We're talking about the beginning. You're saying, no, it's already there. So what, you're already past
what was already there? What are you twisting around that I said?
Where did it
energy that you said,
yeah, exactly. The energy was already there. Thank you.
Energy stuff, right?
Yeah, the energy and the matter existed regardless.
Oh, I see.
Oh, that's the second law of thermodynamics violation.
We're stumbling over
not.
each other to
That's
say
the
the
first
same
law.
thing. You take over, John.
It's just a convoluted clown show with this guy. He goes off on different tangents. He doesn't know what he said the second beforehand. Then he charges us with changing what he said.
Because he's a reasonable person. He asked the question straightforward.
Yeah, he's a reasonable person. Get out of here.
Okay,
I'm not.
Hold on. Let's go back on track. I'll just ask the question again. Let me just ask the question once more. And then we can round it out. You know, if we don't want to move on with this subject. So, what is evolution, Kosho?
Nathan, we've been through this. I'm not going to play that game.
What do you mean? I still don't know what it is.
I can clarify what you're trying to misinterpret with the energy thing that I was saying, and how the chemical process are going to occur regardless, whether there's life or not. The same way diamonds are created without life.
Second law of thermodynamics violation. I'm not sitting here listening to this. I'm sorry. I got better things to do with my time. You, sir, got your science acumen from a Cracker Jack box, right? And this is plainly obvious. You also got your basic reasoning acumen from that box. It was a little prize that came out. You're a clown. I'm sorry.
There's other people
on
the
you
panel.
got better things to do. Go ahead and do them.
Yeah, I do. I got better things to do. Yep, I do.
Few other people on the panel. Hello to everyone else on the panel. Is everybody unmuted that could be unmuted?
I guess so. I was just going to say, he's basically arguing in the beginning was energy, but he'd have to define what energy is and why energy, even though it's part of the physical realm and part of physical laws such as the laws of entropy, is somehow eternal and in violation by definition, because in the beginning was energy. Because in physics, they all agree that the universe will eventually suffer heat death, which is where nothing can be done anymore. No work can happen, no interactions. And so energy is wasted in the form of heat. That's why they call it heat death. So energy itself is running down. Therefore, it's not eternal. Therefore, you have to explain what was the cause of energy in the first place. You can't just start there.
Please don't misinterpret what I said, because I was talking about when I said all energy with that's the first law of thermodynamics. That's not me who wrote that. That's the real law. And so I'm not going to tell you where all the energy came from, but I'm going to tell you that after the energy, which is equivalent to mass. So even in this heat death that you're talking about, or the big freeze or whatever, whenever there's no energy, there's still going to be matter very split up or whatever. So energy is not created or destroyed. It'll just transform into some not useful.
We had this last time. They skipped past the question that, if memory serves me...
Well, I'm clarifying
Kosho,
they were interpreting.
You skipped past the question that I believe it was you that asked about the beginning, where it all came from in the first instance. You asked that. Now
I said if you throw out evolution,
Kosho, I'm talking,
then how
mate.
do you answer
I'm
that?
talking, Kosho. You asked that question.
You guys are all everything I'm saying.
When we come to answering it, why are you talking over me, mate? Let's stick Kosho on mute if somebody who can control the Discord server, because he can't control himself when I'm talking for some reason. Right, Kosho, it was you who asked that question. Where's the beginning, right? Where did it all come from? When it comes to you answering it with nature, you immediately sidestep the beginning and automatically assume, well, we've already got energy. All right, so we're not talking about the beginning when you give your answer. It's you who asked the question.
Precisely, you got it, Nathan. Great job.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
So anybody else on the Discord server want to pipe up? Because we've had enough of Kosho.
Actually, I do want to clarify what you again just interpreted, but I said incorrectly. So I'll state it one time.
From you, Kosho. Just shut up. We might come back to you later. We've heard plenty. I still don't know what evolution is beyond the X-Men explanation, but there we go. And if anyone else on the Discord server wants to pipe up, you're more than willing. This will go out to an audience eventually. Keen panel. Check them out. Just Kosho wants to talk. It's about 10 people in there.
There are 10 people in there, really?
I think so. Let's count them up. Yeah, 10 including me.
Then, hey, Betty, is anyone... Can we get somebody else coherent?
Well, I don't know.
Physics Warrior was piped up. Nobody else has piped up. We had Physics Warrior.
Well, we have people that don't tend to talk here, so... But we have also Mark Taylor here, but he's typing, but he's not speaking. So
yeah, that's good. So they joined the live stream to ask questions.
The after show, right?
Yeah, they're still on the live stream, so they don't want to talk. That's like jumping in a shower and not wanting to get a shower.
Have they all been taken off mute though? Do they all have the ability to talk? I'm so unfamiliar with Discord.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they can talk. I've unmuted them all, so they can all talk if they want to.
I'm still here.
Okay.
You guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah, we still hear you, Chocolate. Less pressure on when it's not actually live, so if there's big gaps, it's like, oof, so what? Fair enough.
Yeah, and I honestly don't see how we twisted any of his words, because
we didn't.
We're just trying to get him to clarify and to recognize contradictions and presume starting points when we're trying to ask, okay, how did that start when it's part of the things that are running down?
Don't chase it. Don't chase it, Paula, because this guy, it's like verbal diarrhea it's like incoherent verbal diarrhea. Nothing has any connections, and he contradicts himself with every other statement, and then he plays the victim card and plays like we've twisted something and we don't understand. It's like talking to an incoherent second grader, right? Ask him what the color of the sucker is, and he starts off on his tangent about recess. It's that bad. He does it every single time.
Yeah, but I can't understand why people make up their minds and don't really know what it's all about. They go the whole length of it. I mean, it seems like he wants to believe because he wants to believe.
Hey, Nathan, when you end this after show, don't skip out. We have to talk about one or two things. No, it won't take long.
No worries.
Okay.
The only thing I wanted was a denying the antecedent example. Can we have one?
I gave you one the other day. What else do you want?
Yeah, you gave me one that was actually specific to this subject, though, didn't you? Because they were talking about fossilized rocks in layers of sediment.
Yeah, that's where the classic denying the antecedent comes from. Yep.
But if they're not buried together, then they didn't exist together.
That's right.
Like, formalize it for me. I want you to do it.
Again?
Yeah, I like it.
Like,
it's just an uncommon fallacy, isn't it?
Formalize that thing again, right? You crack me up.
And it was done on Arwin's show as well.
Yeah.
Was Arwin? Was it on Jose's with Arwin there, or was it on Arwin's show?
Which are you talking to me?
The example that you gave me was a conversation that Arwin had. I just can't remember where the actual show was. I think it might have been Jose's. I don't know how.
It was Jose's show, and Toady Liley was giving his take to Arwin about walking along a beach, and he said he was seeing trilobites in the lower layers, and then as you walk up the beach, there's more advanced creatures like pseudo dinosaurs, whatever the fuck they are, and fish, and as you walk more, you could see more advanced creatures, and he said that they were obviously different elements of time. Right? So that, by definition, is denying the antecedent. That's a formal logical fallacy. And when we say formal logical fallacy, that means this fallacy has a form. Like denying the antecedent, affirming the consequent, those are formal logical fallacies because they have a form. And the form for denying the antecedent is if P, then Q. Not P, therefore not Q. So if they are buried together, P, then they both existed together, Q. They're not buried together, not P, therefore they didn't exist together, therefore not Q.
So what he's saying is, if they're buried in the same layer as I walk up this beach, then obviously they existed in the same time period. However, they're not. They're buried in different layers. And because I attribute time to these different layers, therefore they didn't exist in the same time period. So if buried together, P, then existing together, Q. If not buried together, not P, then not existing together, not Q. Is that correct?
There you go. Yep.
Yay.
Yay.
Wow,
Excellent.
that's silly.
It's a simple logical fallacy. It's in textbooks, dude. They do this in textbooks. If you listen to that Dr. Mary Schweitzer presentation, it's not only in textbooks. Schweitzer did the same thing as Toady Liley did. It's the same exact thing.
So the other thing that didn't get covered is the circular reasoning in terms of how they date the rocks.
Yeah, that's the same. It's in the same section as that. Yeah,
Sure, but it's because it's so closely connected. It's not necessarily that they'll say the formal logical fallacy of denying the antecedent when they hint at the fallacy, right? And that guy didn't. He didn't formalize it. But what he's actually saying is, if they're not buried together, they're not in the same time period.
Right.
And yeah. So the circular reasoning in terms of the way they get the time scale from is to use the fossils themselves, correct?
Right. They use the fossils to date the rocks, and the rocks to date the fossils. Yep.
I remember when I first heard that, it was before Flat Earth, and it's actually my wife that got into the dinosaur hoax. So I wasn't that particularly interested. She cottoned onto it and was dragging me along to museums in London and stuff to see if there was actual fossils or records that we could get our eyeballs on, and there wasn't. There's all the plastic and the fake stuff that's there. And you fast forward a few years, and you've got JLB travelling to the centre of Australia to see the I can't remember what they call them. There's something archetypes. What they claim are the original fossils. And then, does anybody know the term for what they call them? The actual fossils that they claim, like the 17 fragments of ankle that they used to make a T-Rex or something stupid. Can anybody know? Does anybody know the name of them? What do you call?
They're just disarticulated. Is that what you're looking for?
No, there's a specific name for actual claimed to be fossils. So when you go to your whatever the museum I went to in the centre of London, I forgot what name it was. It's not relevant. But when you go there, obviously all the stuff that's on display is what they've extrapolated out from the original fossils. So when they find the original fossils, or what are claimed to be fossils, it's normally a very small, maybe 2 or 3% at best, of the overall structure that they're going to, rebuild from those fossils. But somewhere they do have them, regardless of how much, you can insert the narrative of fakery in terms of how they've come across them in the first instance or what they are. The point is that they do exist in some instances. Obviously not on display in the museum, but you can actually go and have a look at them. Sometimes, not often, or in the case of JLB, travel out to some extensive distance where they actually advertise that they've got them to look at. And he made a whole film out of it. I just can't remember the actual name. It'll kill me after the fact. I'll leave it as a comment and pin it. But yeah, there's a specific name for actual fossils that are claimed to be dinosaur, originals, if you will.
I have no idea.
I'll look it up and I'll pin it.
Are they in situ or something? When they actually find them in the ground, or you're just talking about what they keep in the back rooms?
What they would keep in the back rooms, effectively. What they'd keep in, the.
Yeah, I can't think of that.
Yeah, there's a name for them. And if JLB was watching, you'd be slapping the screen right now. But there we go. I just can't put it's on the tip of my tongue. But nevertheless, it's like I say, there are some what they claim to be original fossils of dinosaurs, but they're tiny percentages, and there's no skulls whatsoever. It's just, little fragments, and they claim that creates this massive thing that they put together just through their own deduction.
Yeah, they did that with whales too. The guy said he just made it up. He's on tape. He was the University of Michigan. I can't remember his name, but I got it somewhere in my files where they just have a few fossilized bones. And they just make shit up. They make up the whole organism just from a few bones. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. The percentage, if you actually track down how much information they have on any given dinosaur, they'll have a tiny percentage. So they might have, if they were to lay it out next to what they claim is the overall skeletal structure of a T-Rex, for example, they'll have an ankle. That's what they'll have, But they won't have an ankle because it'll be a bit of ankle and a bit of hip and whatever, they've got little various bits, but in percentage terms, you're talking a couple of percent of what they extract out to be a dinosaur. If you saw the pile of rubble or what looks like a bit of wood, decaying wood in a glass chamber, you'd go, wow, you're telling me that from that T-Rex, really? But that is the claim. They just don't tell you that bit.
Right.
And then there's all the dinosaurs they had to unclassify as different types because facepalm, some of these are juveniles. They're little because they're not developed yet. They're not adults. And they were taking those as different species or different times, in the evolutionary chain because they were smaller and less complicated. They were just juveniles. So that they make those fundamental common sense errors all the time, not counting the fact that they'll take, even when they find a few bones, they'll combine bones from acres of land and make something out of it and say, this is a creature we found, and they might not even be in the same rock layer. So it's a scam, the whole thing.
I'm looking for it now because it's going to book me if it's not on the recording. What they're called, frantically Google searching. I'll get there. Still no one piping up in the Discord server. Feel free to chime in.
And we didn't talk about flood geology and how the natural sorting action of floods accounts for the simpler organisms being buried first, because the bigger ones are going to get out of the water first, as it rises.
Yeah, the deep sea organisms are going to be on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is pretty funny. Yeah.
and Mount St. Helens and the mini Grand Canyon that formed within weeks and months back in the 80s. You know, it had those sharp lines between layers. How does that happen with uniformitarianism? How do you get sharp lines between layers? You know, is that the punctuated equilibrium magic wand?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
That's I call it the no change.
Yeah, it doesn't change until we want it to, and then all of a sudden there was a change.
Did I?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. What's your name?
You can call me the One.
The One. Oh, is it Mark? How you doing, Mark? What's your question?
Oh, cool. If they find 50% of a human skeleton, what's wrong with constructing the other 50%? Say, for instance, they find a left leg, left arm, all the way down the left side of the rib cage, the left leg, the left foot. What's wrong with adding the extra 50% to that skeleton? What would be wrong with that?
Well, nothing. Nothing's wrong with that. What's your point?
Right. So if they find 30% of a skeleton, they know what the leg looks like because they've got one leg, and so say
they already got one. You just answered your question. That's how they can construct it.
So you're just going to talk over me, yeah? Because if so, I'm just not going to talk. You wanted someone to talk. I'm trying to ask a question. If you're going to talk over me, I'm just not going to talk.
Okay,
if that's what you want, then say I won't talk.
The reason he spoke over you is because you answered your own question in your statement.
Precisely.
How did I do that?
They've already got another leg, so they know what a leg looks like. So there's your answer.
Right, so what? The right leg of a human is different to the left leg then, Nathan?
No. Okay, so we're talking at cross purposes. So you're talking about something that we already know what it looks like, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm talking about if they find 30% of a skeleton, they find one leg, they find ribs out of it, then obviously a leg is going to go on the other side of the body. Unless the dinosaur's deformed, if they find one leg, they know what the leg looks like, so they just make another leg, and that's the other leg, isn't it? What's so difficult about that to understand?
So, have you got examples of where they found 30% of a dinosaur? That sounds like quite a high percentage.
That's what you quoted earlier, wasn't it?
I said about 3%.
Well, I've just put an article in the chat that says they've got 90% of a T-Rex.
90%?
Yeah, 90%.
In one spot?
Didn't you know that?
I didn't know that, Mark.
Well, I'll put the link. I'll put the thing in there. I can put a link in if you want.
Yes, please.
It's quite a well-known dinosaur. I'm surprised John doesn't know the name of it.
But I didn't say John didn't know that. I said I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. I'm surprised John doesn't know the name of the dinosaur. The T-Rex. They found 90%.
Yeah, I know of the T-Rex. I had pajamas when I was a kid.
Right then. So it's not 3% then, Nathan, is it?
Well, I haven't seen the article yet.
What, you want the article, do you?
I'll just take your word for it. Don't worry about it.
No, it's okay. I'll link it. I don't mind linking it. Now, what do you want? Do you want a YouTube video about it, or do you want a Wikipedia, or do you want a scientific paper?
Anything you like. My understanding was they've got very low percentages. Having looked into it, been to a few museums, asked a few questions. Now, if you're saying different, I'm more than willing to look at it, Mark.
And we're not saying that T-Rexes didn't exist necessarily or anything like that. We're saying that the vast majority of creatures that they put together don't have much at all to go on. That's all we're saying.
Well, there's a link. There's even a picture of it in the chat.
Thank you very much. How do I find that?
I've put it in the our chat, so you can see it there.
Yeah, I'll put it in live stream.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I put it in Skype here, where we are.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll be back. Supper time. I'll see if you're still here. Sorry.
Yeah, just go eat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got a pizza coming. I'm gonna collapse its wave function, man.
Yeah, but how about this dinosaur doesn't prove evolution, does it? On its own?
No, they're talking about something different. Nathan and Mark's talking about just a little different subject, not
Oh,
specifically
okay.
evolution.
More the forensic stuff of it. Finding a dinosaur. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to ask Nathan what's wrong with my suggestion. You know, if they only find 30% of it, then they can mirror what's on the other side of the body, can't they?
Yeah, but you see, the problem is they already know what a human skeleton looks like. So when they're conjuring these different animals, they only got 30%. They don't know what the other parts look like. That's the problem.
I believe they found once
they do, John, because
tooth.
they've got the other parts. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you if that's you, Paula.
It was me.
Go on.
Sorry. Yeah, I
Go on,
thought I once found a tooth and made a sort of a precursor to a human, but later on it turned out to be a pig's tooth. So
Right, that's the problem you run into.
So they extrapolate these things, right?
Yeah, well, I could agree with you on that, B. But my argument was that if they find a leg of a dinosaur with ribs and other parts of the body, they can practically mirror the other side of the dinosaur's body, can't they? And I don't see what the problem is with that. They know what the legs
usually
are
not the
because they've
problem.
got one leg.
Yeah, if they have a whole dinosaur skeleton previously, yeah, they could do that. That's not a problem. That's not Nathan's argument.
If you find a leg, John, you know what the leg looks like. Unless the dinosaur's deformed, then the leg is exactly the same. Show me an animal where one leg is completely different to the other leg on the animal.
Well, I'm not talking about that.
A crab. You have a crab. You have one scissors on one side that's bigger than the other side.
There's a good example. Yeah.
There goes your theory.
No,
maybe one of these dinosaurs had a big giant scissors on one of his hand.
But the main part of the leg's still the same. The main part of the leg's still the same, isn't it?
What? Sorry?
Just because one hand's got a claw on it doesn't mean the major part of the arm's different. It's still the same.
Yeah, but
it's just got a different appendage on the end of the arm.
Wrong. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
I'm just saying that the main part of the arm wouldn't be different. It'd just be the appendage on the end of the arm.
Yeah, but you know, Mark, sometimes the head is missing. And what they do then is they put a head on what they think that it might be.
Right. Or a tail.
Yeah. Or they construct the whole dinosaur the wrong way.
That may be not good science, but I'm not anywhere I got a clue about all this shit. All I'm doing is just I wanted to say something because Nathan was saying that they're only finding 3% of dinosaurs, which is rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan, how do you do that?
How do I do what? Sorry, I'm reading this article he sent me.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
What was the question?
Mark, can you say the question again? Hello, Mark?
Hello? Nope, clearly not that important. I'll carry on reading.
Hello? I didn't even ask you a question.
Yeah, it's Nathan. You said, or a statement. You made maybe a statement.
No, Nathan said that they're only finding 3% of dinosaurs. And that's clearly wrong, and that's why I asked Nathan. And also he was saying that they just make stuff up about dinosaurs, but I can't see a problem. If you find one leg of a human and some ribs and that, then you can mirror the leg on the other side. I don't see a problem with that. If they're just finding a head and they've got no other lineage to that creature, then yes, I agree that just making shit up is no good. But like I said, I don't go around digging dinosaurs up, so I don't know what they do. All I was doing was just trying to highlight the fact that Nathan's wrong about 3%. If you want to deny that the actual thing's real now, that's up to you, but they're finding more than 3%.
Well, sometimes not, of course, because the tooth the example that I gave you. And also, I think that it was Piltdown Man, or you had some sort of jaw of a chimp that was found in a cave. In one other cave, they found the rest, and they put it together, and that was a sort of a precursor to a human. And that later seemed to be a hoax. So we have to be careful about these things, don't you think, Mark?
Like I said, B, I mean, in a conversation, yeah, that sounds dodgy, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Like until you get someone in there that actually does this for a living and knows what they're talking about, I couldn't comment on it. Like in conversation, yeah, that doesn't make sense. If you're gonna make a whole dinosaur out of one tooth, then yeah, that's dodgy to me. But like I said, I don't know how they do it, B. So it's just speculation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to look
But
at
like,
everything separately, right? Every case is separate.
Sorry, can you say that again? Because I talked over you a bit there. Sorry.
Yeah, you have to look at everything separately, right? So every time you find something or you read about a find, you have to basically research it yourself to see how they came to it, and what's real and what's not real. And since we never ever to see these bones ourselves because they're stored away somewhere, we can never see the real thing, right?
So that's not true either. That's not true either, B. You can go out if you go to the places where these dinosaurs are being found. You can go on expeditions with these people, and you can go and dig them up.
You think that I can go with them?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think that
when they do
because
digs, when they
that
do
would
digs
give
in
a large
America,
audience.
when they do digs in America, they put out adverts for people to do voluntary work and come and help them excavate dinosaurs.
Yeah, so we can excavate some bones, but can we see them put together and be in that process and see how that works?
Well, yeah. If you're in the whole process, yeah, I'd imagine that at the end of once it's all been excavated, that it gets taken back and then gets worked on and put together. Yeah, and I imagine you can see it. Yeah, whether you're
Well, I
actually
think that
allowed.
then you have to be a specialist.
Say that again, Barry, sorry.
Then you have to be a specialist to be at the process of putting that thing together, because they plaster everything, they ship it away somewhere, and then they have to unpack it and clean it, and those are people that are specialized in that, right? I don't think that the whole public is about to look at that process.
Not in the cleaning up process, but in the archaeology of the digging the dinosaurs up. They do. There's loads of programs. You can go and watch the programs. Like that.
Yeah, sure, but I think that there's lots of things that can happen in the meanwhile what we're not aware of, right?
What do you mean?
Well, like I said, you have these people that clean these bones up because they're plastered up, and you have these people that can clean them up, and there are other people that put that skeleton together, right? And if they miss something, then they do what you say, and they extrapolate from one leg to the other and mirror that. Who would know that the one that cleans the bones is not the one that puts the skeleton together? So there's a lot of things that can happen. And since most of these skeletons in the museum aren't the real bones, but how do you say that?
Yeah, because that's the fossilization process, though, Barry, isn't it?
Yeah, but they don't show these real bones in the museums.
Yeah, but there's no real bones. That's the fossilized. That's what happens when things fossil.
Yeah, but
the bone
that's
gets
what
replaced
I mean.
by minerals.
Yeah, it's minerals, but those they don't. How do you say explicit? Put them in the museums. They put casts of them in the museums. It's not the real thing that you see there.
Yeah, because they're very valuable, Betty.
Yeah, sure. But then how would we know what's real and what's not real, Mark?
Well, I mean, you can learn how to do these kind of things and go and do it yourself. Like I said, I see a program only a couple of months ago where they was doing an excavation, and they found a T-Rex on a farmer's land in Dakota, I think it was, the Badlands of Dakota, and they put out an advert in all the universities for people to help. And they got loads of people, they interviewed them, and they went out and dug it up. And like the bones they were getting, the head was huge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, it's not as if like you're finding little chicken bones and then they're coming back and saying, look at the size of this dinosaur. They're digging things out of the ground that are absolutely huge.
That's not true. I've just literally happened to be reading that part of the article you sent me. So it was in lots of little pieces. That's what they say. It was just all smashed and damaged. And then when they reformed it, they had to make loads of adjustments for the thing they actually displayed. So it's not actually like what they claim to be the fossil. they've made their own interpretation of it when they cast it. But they've cast it from lots of damaged bones, as they put it.
What's wrong with that?
Well, you tell me.
Did they find
so
the
if
head
you get
of
a jigsaw puzzle, if you get a jigsaw puzzle and you put it all together and one piece is missing, because that one piece is missing, does that mean the whole jigsaw puzzle can't get any information from it?
Well, no, the bones themselves, if they were all, intact, would be a jigsaw puzzle.
No, it'd just be a jigsaw puzzle with less pieces.
Sorry, I just got back. Did we get an answer?
These things have been in the ground for millions of years, Nathan. So if you think you're just going to dig up and there's going to be a T-Rex completely whole, just taking a bite out of some other dinosaur, then you know what I mean? It's just not going to happen, is it?
Wait a second. How many?
You've
Did
got
you say
tectonic
billions of
plates
years?
moving the Earth about.
Isn't that what
Hold on a
fossil
second.
is?
Hold on a
fossil
second.
is?
Hold on a second. Oh God.
Sorry, John.
Did you say billions of years?
Millions.
Millions. Can you scientifically validate for that for me, please?
No, because I'm not a scientist, John.
Okay, then there's not millions of years. You're just parroting what other people told you.
Okay, and you're just parroting something to me then. So if I believe
No,
you, then
I'm not parroting.
I'm just as bad as before then, aren't I, John?
No,
Because
I'm not
you're just
parroting.
somebody.
I know this stuff.
Oh, how do you know then stuff?
I know the scientific method. I am a retired
Right.
scientist.
Right.
That's
So
how I know.
What radiometric dating have you done then, John?
Radiometric dating. The radiometric dating laws are subject to the quantum mechanical laws. So my question to you is, how do you have matter without the path information existing? Say good night, Mark.
Well, where are you going?
No, I'm not going
Where are you
anywhere.
going?
It's
Good
your
night, John.
bedtime.
Bye. See ya.
It's your bedtime.
Not my bedtime.
That's how I explain it. I'll tell you what. Go watch my Dr. Mary Schweitzer. Go watch my Dr. Mary Schweitzer presentation, and I go through it step by step for you. Go ahead and talk all over me, Mark. Go ahead and talk all over me. Listen to this. Go Google yourself.
You stop now. So where did God come from, John? Who created God, John?
Isn't that a straw man? Because we don't talk about God here now. We're talking about
You just
dinosaurs.
said I could a minute ago, B. I'll scroll up to it. I said, can we talk about God? And you put, do you want to? ?
Yeah,
so
because
I took that
that was a precursor.
So I'm asking John,
just because you
where did
wanted
God
to,
come
right?
from? I'm asking
you want to
John,
know
where did
what
God
God
come from?
came from.
He didn't hear you, Betty. He was talking over you the whole time.
Yeah.
Freaking clown.
Well, you heard me, John. I'm asking you the question, where did God come from?
I'm not talking. I already told you, say goodnight.
You
just changing the subjects. You're just changing the subjects, Mark, like you do all the time. You're a little crayon muncher. First, you went from radiometric dating. You don't know what the hell it is, right? And I said, where do you get the path information? You don't know. Then you change the subject again. We're not playing your little fuckwit games. Yeah, go Google yourself.
Yeah, John, I don't know about science, but you know about God, don't you? You keep talking about God, so you should better answer my simple question. I told you I'm not a scientist, so asking me where about physics and that, then I don't know about physics. I'm not a scientist, John, but you're a Christian, and you keep saying all this information about God that you've proved God. So who created God, John?
It doesn't need to be created, Mark.
Oh, so special pleading. Okay, then. Well, the universe didn't need to be created. The Big Bang.
Quantum mechanics says that
it.
time and space doesn't exist.
Well, the Big Bang created, B. If you can special plead, so can I.
Yeah,
so
but then who created? What was there before the Big Bang then? Who made that Big Bang? And what
didn't need to
what
be
is never
made.
being created after an explosion?
It didn't need to be created, B.
It didn't need.
The Big
So
Bang,
everything
Big
comes
Bang didn't need to be
from nothing.
created, no.
Without intent, Mark. So if I want my work to be done, so I just sit at home and think about it, or I do even nothing. I just put some stuff together, and that's we could see ourselves together to do something, right? That doesn't happen that way. You have to have
So how did
intent
God
and
do it then,
information.
B? So how did
Intent
God
and
do it then,
information,
B?
Mark. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
How did God do it then?
Well, you think that God is you, Mark. That's the problem. You can't do
No,
it.
I don't think
But
I'm the
he
God
can.
at all, B. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well,
I'm asking you how
yeah.
you said that
Well,
things just can't
let's make
happen.
an
So I'm
analogy.
asking you, how did God do it then?
Like, let's make an analogy, Mark. You have a car,
So you're
right?
not going to answer my question
Suppose.
then, B.
Yeah, it will
I've answered.
because
I
I will
answered
put it
yours.
in an
Hopefully,
analogy for you because otherwise you won't.
yeah, I don't mean to be
understand.
talking over you, but there's a bit of a delay, B. So I think
Yeah.
you've stopped where, obviously, well, because you're on Skype, there's a bit of delay. So
Yeah, I understand. Sorry. So let me get my analogy out, right? You have this car. Man created a car, right? Now suppose that car could think, right? And that car has its rules, right? So it knows how to use roads, the steering wheel, the wheels. But how can it ever think about something beyond itself to come up with man with two legs, eyes, and stuff? I mean, now we are the creation. We are that car thinking about God. How can we ever have any concept about all these attributes of God? It's beyond our program, right?
right, see, science isn't like that. We've got an explanation for what they think happened at the time of the start of the universe, B. I mean, if you want to believe
Sorry,
that, that's
I
up to
didn't
you. If you don't
understand the
want to
question.
believe it, if you don't want to believe it, then that's again up to you. But you can't say everything's got to be created, and then when I ask you where God comes from, and you say God doesn't have to be created, that's special pleading, B. I mean,
No, it isn't,
that
Mark.
fallacy's been around longer than Christ, special pleading. I mean, I'm
Because if
surprised that
time and
Christians still
space
do it.
doesn't exist, Mark, if time and space doesn't
Sorry?
exist, if time and space doesn't exist, and everything is in big now and in no distance, then everything is there at the same point at the same time, right? So there is no need for a creator of the creator of the creator. There's just a creator without time and space.
Well, okay,
He
then
doesn't
it's
need.
just a Big Bang, then, Betty. Don't you see
Well, the Big
the
Bang,
trouble
Mark,
with that
has a
argument,
problem.
Betty? Don't you know? But
Mark,
don't you see the problem with your argument? It's okay
no.
for you to say that no one created God. God was just there. But when someone says, "Well, we don't know what happened before the Big Bang," and you start saying, "Well, hold on a minute, you can't create this out of nothing. It has to be created." That's just not a valid argument, Betty. Sorry.
Well, the thing is, Mark, that you don't consider the fact that with a Big Bang there is no intelligent designer there, right? There's
No,
no one that
I
has
don't
the
agree with that at
intent
all.
and the motivation.
I'm not saying there's no
to do
God and there's never ever been a God. I don't know because I've never seen any evidence of a God. God could have easily have started the Big Bang and just sat back and watch it perform its tricks with the laws of physics we know today.
That's what a lot of people believe, also, Mark. But that's not what I believe.
Well, that's up to you, B. All I'm doing is highlighting that your argument isn't sound because it's okay for you to special plead, but if I special plead, then somehow my
Well, the
argument's
thing is,
invalid.
Mark, with my special pleading, I just have intelligent design there and intent and cause, and yours has not. Nothing ever comes
Well, not at the
from
moment.
nothing.
Not at the moment, but in 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, we might
Yeah.
know. But at this moment,
Okay.
I'm just going
So
to special plead like you do.
let's me put all these ingredients of a man together and put it somewhere in a vacuum somewhere, whatever. And in a vacuum, I mean just sterile place, and then we'll wait for hundreds of or millions of years, and then see what happens. I don't think that there will be anything there, Mark, because there's no cause, there's no effect, no intent, no design, no information. There's no thought going into that, right?
Well, I mean, science disagrees with that, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, sure, because they don't want to have to do with intelligent design. They don't want that.
He said science disagrees with you, Betty. Is science an entity?
No.
Okay, then stick with the argument.
Well, I mean, B, they you know, they say that they can't deal with things that are supernatural. You know, that's not what science is about. John should know that. So you can't equate science with God because, you know, how can you prove something that's outside time and space?
Hey, Nathan. Nathan, are you around?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we about done with this?
Yeah, can round out if you want.
Yeah, it's round out, man, because my pizza's going to be coming, and I got more important things to do than listen to this idiot. I also got something to talk to you about. Thanks.
Okay, John. Bye-bye.
And a big thanks to all of you in the Discord server. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you who have tuned in on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream for tuning in, hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. Again, a massive thank you to all of the Ballbusters panel for making this Ballbusters possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.